Chapter 63. The drunken conversation with martial uncle Ao Guanhai at the table faded away the next day as he woke up. His martial uncle was still the optimistic martial uncle. His pair of dark face always hung with an optimistic and positive smile. Whenever he mentioned his fifth senior sister, his face would always be as pious as a pilgrim. As for Wang Lu, he still couldn't have any positive impression of his master. However, that drunken conversation more or less left a shadow in Wang Lu's mind. After that, although Wang Lu was very resistant, he still recalled the details of his master's life in the past 2 years from time to time, trying to dig out evidence that she was a good person. To be honest, Wang Wu was definitely not a bad person. At least, she had never done it and there was no sign that she would do evil things. But other than that, this person was greedy, lustful, and had no moral integrity. No matter how he looked at her, she was far from the model senior sister in martial uncle Ao Guanhai's eyes. No, they were two completely opposite people. So, how did his master leave such an unforgettable impression on martial uncle Ao Guanhai? Although this foreign race elder was simple and honest, he was not a fool. How could he be an elder of spirit sword sect with the identity of a foreign race be a fool? Although according to martial uncle Guanhai, he had received great kindness from his master when he was young, but after nearly 100 years, no matter how great the kindness was, it was definitely not the reason why martial uncle admired him so much. What's more, during this period, martial uncle Guanhai refined the sword pill for her, and other elixirs were also provided to her like water. No matter how many lives he saved, it was enough to repay the kindness. But he still acted like he owed her a lot. From this, it could be deduced that his master was fooling a fool. Oh no, how brilliant was her communication skills. If she could learn this trick, she could make the head of the school the elder of training, and the elder in charge of punishment. Wouldn't she be free and unfettered in Lingjian school in the future? With all kinds of fantasies, Wang Lu walked into the cafeteria of Misty Peak. Because he freeloaded too much at the Ru family inn and ate 3 days' worth of food, Wang Lu had been temporarily blacklisted by Little Ling Er. What was more hateful was that she also hung a sign at the door. Wang Lu and pigs are not allowed in. Wang Lu was not happy at that time. It's fine if you don't let me in, but why bother when Bao? Without the free food from the Ru family inn, he could only come to the Misty Peak cafeteria to experience the philosophy of life of the Western chef. Following the previous 13 gangsters look up at the starry sky, this time, the blonde gourmet invented a dish called sword in the stone. According to Wang Lu's observation, it was roughly a frozen fish that was inserted upside down into a pancake. Other than pancakes and fish, can't you have something fresh? While breaking the edge of the pancake, he swallowed it bit by bit with water. Wang Lu felt that he couldn't live on anymore. He couldn't help but hate his unscrupulous master who gave him a long-term meal ticket in Misty Peak. Can't you save some wine money and get me a meal ticket in Carefree Peak? However, halfway through his meal, Wang Lu suddenly found that it was a bit too quiet around him. Although the Misty Peak had never been popular for various reasons, there would usually be 3 to 5 people in the cafeteria at noon. But today, how come he was the only one here? Could it be that he was shocked by the stone sword? Thinking of this, Wang Lu couldn't help but ask, "Where the hell are all the people?" Then he heard a clear female voice, "Everyone went to 4 Divisions Peak just an hour ago." Wang Lu turned his head and saw the Western gourmet helplessly standing at the entrance of the kitchen. Apparently, she was sad about the deserted scene. Different from the general impression of a chef, this Western gourmet didn't have a big head and thick neck, nor did she have a big waist and fat belly. Instead, she was a petite but beautiful girl. She looked about 13 or 14 years old, but her pair of green eyes carried the vicissitudes of life that didn't belong to her age. The chef was by no means an ordinary chef. To be able to travel thousands of miles from the Western continent, this girl obviously had a lot of stories. Moreover, it could be seen from one point. What she did in the Misty Peak cafeteria caused the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the people, yet the elders didn't respond to the call to expel her from the mountain. However, Wang Lu never inquired about this gossip. In the words of a professional adventurer, don't randomly accept tasks that you shouldn't accept, and don't trigger side tasks that you shouldn't trigger. Therefore, he just followed the girl's topic and asked, "Why did you go to 4 Divisions Peak?" It seems that the 5th elder has returned to the mountain. Wang Lu was stunned, thinking, "Master has returned to the mountain? That's pretty fast." Then the next question was, if that guy has returned to the mountain, then she has returned to the mountain. How could she attract the attention of tens of thousands of people? Is her popularity that good? If it was Huayun, it would still be okay. The young chef girl said, "It seems that she has caused some trouble and was chased to the front door." Well, sure enough. Although he had already expected this, out of humanitarian concern, Wang Lu still weakly asked. What trouble did she cause? Did she make a local girl pregnant and was forced to marry by the other party's father? The young chef girl shook her head. This is not clear. I just heard other people talking about it when they were eating. It seems that the fifth elder is being interrogated by the other elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall. AI, this is really a happy occasion. Wang Lu said and tore a piece of cake. After eating and drinking, he was ready to go to the Four Divisions Peak to watch the condemnation. However, after the young chef girl provided the information, she didn't immediately return to the kitchen. Instead, she frowned and said, I remember, you are the disciple of the fifth elder? Something happened to your master, aren't you worried? Wang Lu thought for a moment. I'm only worried that the elders will give face to her fellow disciples and give her a way out. If we can take this opportunity to correct her twisted character and help her reconstruct her personality, I believe that it will greatly improve the average style of the entire immortal cultivation world. These words were a little long, and the foreign race girl had some difficulty listening to them. After a while, her delicate eyebrows furrowed even deeper. You hate your master? Wang Lu seriously thought for a moment. From a personal point of view, I actually admire her shamelessness. But as a person of society, considering the general moral level of the public, I have no choice but to firmly despise her. Sorry, I don't quite understand. The young girl's green eyes were filled with calmness and sincerity. But I think that you have a serious misunderstanding about your master. I have met Wang Wu many times. She is a real swordsman with an iron will and character. Such a person is not a bad person. Wang Lu was shocked on the spot. This Western continent chef didn't taste her own food and then became delirious, right? Or does she have the same short-sightedness as the sect leader? A real swordsman? An iron will? Who is she talking about? The young girl further explained, I used to be the king. That, in short, I have dealt with a lot of excellent knights, and I know how to distinguish a person's temperament. Believe me, your master is a very good cultivator. Wang Lu sighed. You, a Western continent chef who can't even distinguish between soy sauce and vinegar, have the nerve to say that you know how to distinguish? Anyone who bought a long-term meal ticket from your family would probably become a good person with excellent character. That being said, however, when Wang Lu left the Misty Peak and headed toward the Four Divisions Peak, the doubts in his heart inevitably increased. If it was only that green-eyed chef's words, Wang Lu would just regard her as a retard. However, combined with the seventh elder's words, Wang Lu couldn't help but hesitate. Could it be that there is really something wrong with that guy's character? Tieske, if there is a chance in the future, I have to use a magnifying glass to observe her. But for now, it's better to go to the Four Divisions Peak and watch the fun first. Along the way to the Four Divisions Peak, from time to time, he could see the senior brothers and sisters of the sect gathering at the Four Divisions Peak from all directions. Obviously, they were all gossipers. Moreover, they obviously haven't arrived at the scene yet, but as they walked, they already began to talk and spread all kinds of gossip. And the rumors that he heard along the way made Wang Lu frown. A disciple of the Carefree Peak who had been in the sect for about 15 years asked, I heard that this time, the fifth elder offended someone again? Next to him was another senior disciple of the Carefree Peak, so he obviously had more sources of gossip. Yes, I heard that it was an elder of a big sect and he was very aggressive. Fifth elder, I usually don't have much contact with her. Senior brother, you should know more about her. What kind of person is she? That senior disciple hesitated for a while and said in a low voice, I also don't know much about her, but it is said that among the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall, other than the seventh elder who has a good relationship with her, the others all have a deep hatred for her. The young disciple was a little surprised. Deep hatred? It can't be that serious, right? Sai, it really doesn't seem that serious. It is said that the 10 elders have all survived a catastrophe that happened 100 years ago, so of course they have to give each other some face. However, as far as I know, the second elder and the third elder have always been impeaching the fifth elder, hoping to expel her from the Heavenly Sword Hall. So serious? The young disciple was surprised. Is it because of her cultivation? Speaking of which, among the 10 elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall, only she has a king pill cultivation. Speaking of this, the young disciple hesitated and said, but it is said that she is a famous master of defense. The senior disciple sneered. So what if she is a master of defense? She is just a king pill cultivator. No matter how good she is at defense, can she withstand a blow from a Yuanian cultivator? She is probably bragging, otherwise how can she have a sense of existence in the sect? Now there are several inner court disciples who have reached the king pill realm. As an elder, does she have the nerve to do that? The young disciple was stunned for a while. Senior brother, your words are a bit too absolute. Didn't Master often say that cultivation is not absolute? In the immortal cultivation world, cross-stage challenges happen from time to time. The senior disciple shook his head and said, cultivators with natural spiritual roots fight cultivators with man-made spiritual roots. Ancient sects fight ordinary sects. Heavenly spiritual roots fight five-element spiritual roots. Indeed, cross-stage challenges can be successful, but take our Lingjin school as an example. Cultivators of ancient sects are all carefully selected disciples with excellent qualifications, and the cultivation methods they practice are all first class in the world. There is no possibility of cross-stage challenges. If it were you, can you beat those shoot-on-stage senior brothers? This is indeed hopeless. That's why it's impossible for the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall to surpass their realms. A gold core is a gold core, there's no way they can be compared to the other elders. Moreover, it's not just because of their cultivation, it seems like there's also a problem with their character. You see, our elders often go out to travel, but only she causes trouble every few days. Only she has been formally impeached by the third elder. Don't look at how the third elder is very strict with the sect's rules, but generally when it comes to the final punishment he will be lenient. The young disciple was suddenly speechless. After a while he said, then senior brother, what do you think will happen this time? How would I know? I am also rushing to the 4 divisions peak, but I really don't think so. The 2 carefree peak disciples were flying on their flying swords, so they didn't notice that the content of their conversation had been heard word for word by a successor disciple who was walking below. After listening to them, Wang Lu's heart was indeed in a bad mood. Although he often didn't like his master, but, alas, they were all residents of Non-Phase Peak. If one fell, all fell. If the 5th elder's name fell, how good could his end be? Therefore, although the 7th elder and the Western chef's words were typical of the minority, subjectively, he would rather believe the 2 people's words. Master, please be a good person. Chapter 64. Spirit Sword Hall, 4 Divisions Peak. Spirit Sword Hall. Among the 12 peaks of Spirit Sword Sect, the 4 Divisions Peak was the transportation hub with the densest concentration of shrinking arrays. At the same time, the 4 Divisions Peak was also one of the important places for the Lingjin School to receive foreign guests. This Spirit Sword Hall, which stood on the side of the square in the middle of the 4 Divisions Peak, was the place where the senior members of the sect met the foreign guests. When Wang Lu arrived at the 4 Divisions Peak, the front of the Spirit Sword Hall had been sealed off. 2 King Pill inner court disciples firmly guarded the door, like black-faced door gods. They were the favorite disciples of Uncle Lu Xian. Although they were not the successor disciples, the current successor disciples of the sect were very young, and their cultivation base was insufficient. These 2 Taoist masters of the King Pill sect were comparable to the successor disciples, so their status was not ordinary. Such a person was sent to guard the door, which was a very high standard meeting of the Lingjin school. And the identity of the person who came to the hall to look for trouble could be imagined. He was probably not an ordinary elder of a big sect. At this time, there were 30 to 40 people gathered in front of the hall, both inner and outer court disciples. Wang Lu looked around and found a carefree peak disciple whom he was familiar with. He patted her on the shoulder. Hello, junior sister. That young female disciple looked back and saw Wang Lu and was surprised. Senior brother Wang Lu? She looked around and whispered, why are you here? Go back. Wang Lu was also taken aback. What's the matter with your attitude, as if you've just stepped on dog shit? Junior sister one, I've never wronged you, have I? At most, I used the giant brute's whip to scare you, yet you still hate me? The person who was found by Wang Lu was his junior sister Wen, who entered the mountain at the same time. After listening to Wang Lu's accusation, the little girl frowned. What are you talking about? I'm doing this for your own good. Do you know who's inside? Wang Lu thought for a moment and guessed, could it be my master's lover? Mistaking me for her illegitimate son, so she came to look for trouble? Wen was instantly stunned by his wild imagination. You are indeed master and disciple, you are equally unreliable. Let me tell you this time, it's the people from Xingjing sect. Xingjing sect? Wang Lu frowned. Wasn't that the forever correct and always glorious big brother of the Wanxian League? Could it be that master had offended their people? I don't know the specific situation, but I heard from the senior brothers and sisters that when that Xingjing sect elder came, he was very aggressive and scary. Wang Lu thought for a moment. Because my master stole his concubine? Your master is a woman, okay? Then My master stole his man? The Shengjing sect elder is a man. The innocent junior sister completely couldn't understand the true meaning of love. Seeing that Wang Lu was still pestering her endlessly, she somewhat anxiously advised, "You'd better leave quickly. This time, it's said that the matter is very big." No matter what, the other party refused to let it go. Right now, the sect leader is accompanying them in the Spirit Sword Hall. I heard that the fifth elder has been controlled by the second and third elder. The follow-up development is really hard to say. If you get implicated, that would be bad. Seeing Wen Yin's solemn words, Wang Lu's heart sank, thinking, it's really big? In Wang Lu's impression, although his master liked to cause trouble, she was not a fool who couldn't grasp propriety. She didn't make big mistakes, but small mistakes were unceasing. She was like a graceful swallow that danced on the nerves of the second and third elder that could explode at any time. Her misdeeds for many years were not a big deal. However, this time, even an outer court disciple like Wen Yin could see the problem, which showed that the matter was really not good. However, what really made Wang Lu frown was, no matter how big the trouble the fifth elder caused, she was, after all, a member of the Lingjian school. And looking at the current situation, the sect leader personally came forward to accompany them, while the second and third elder detained the criminal. What were they going to do? Decisively put righteousness before family? Although from a moral point of view, helping reason and not helping family was more noble, in today's immortal cultivation world, nobility alone could not run a big sect. Not to mention the fifth elder had just returned to the mountain for less than half a day, so it was impossible for her to clearly explain the truth of the matter. Could it be that under the pressure of the Shengjing sect, she bowed her head? While he was thinking, he suddenly saw a tall cultivator step out of the Spirit Sword Hall. His pace seemed impatient and uneasy. After that person went out, he walked in circles in front of the door. However, with every step he took, a lot of green grass and wildflowers would grow out from the cracks on the white flagstone floor. After a few circles, the front of the Spirit Sword Hall was actually covered with greenery. Although it seemed magical, it actually showed that the cultivator was restless, unable to control the magical power within his body, which then leaked out. And what happened in the hall that could make a cultivator with a high cultivation base uneasy was even more curious. "Hey, senior brother, who is he?" Wen Yin curiously looked at the tall cultivator who was walking in circles in front of the door. Since that person could come out from the Spirit Sword Hall, his status should be very high. However, that person hid his face in the hood, which made him look mysterious. Wen Yin didn't remember seeing such a senior. However, how could Wang Lu not recognize that it was the seventh elder Ao Guanhai, who was a good friend of his master? Since the optimistic and cheerful Uncle Black could be agitated like this, it was self-evident what happened in the Spirit Sword Hall. And just at this time, Ao Guanhai also noticed Wang Lu. "Wang Lu, you're here too?" Uncle Black's voice appeared in Wang Lu's mind without warning. If a Yuanying stage Taoist master wanted to talk to someone, he didn't need to open his mouth. With his powerful primordial spirit, with just a thought, he could directly invade the other party's consciousness. However, at this time, what Ao Guanhai used didn't involve the primordial spirit's power, but a simple sound transmission spell. This spell was a two-way communication, so as long as Wang Lu thought about the response in his mind, he could directly reply back. However, this time, Uncle Black didn't give him the opportunity to speak, and immediately poured out his grievances. "It seems like you also know. Alas, the Shengjing sect people are really overbearing. As soon as they entered the mountain, they yelled and shouted for the sect leader to hand over the person. Later on, the sect leader came forward to negotiate with him, but without any evidence, he framed fifth senior sister and forced our Lingjian school to bow our head. Simply unreasonable. But senior brother still wanted to negotiate with him. Really, what's there to negotiate with? If you ask me, we should expel that rude and unreasonable person from the sect. What's wrong with Shengjing sect? Do you think they can be unreasonable?" But senior brother is not willing, and even tried to talk nicely to them, and even entertain them with Green Mountain Mist tea. Obviously, last time when fifth senior sister picked a few caddies, she was scolded by the third elder for a long time, but now she actually entertained a bad guest. Simply alas. As a result, before he could finish his words, a sigh came from inside the hall, interrupting the two people's sound transmission. "Junior brother, come in." Ao Guanhai seriously shook his head. "Senior brother, you're now on the side of appeasement and compromise. I'm determined not to be on your side." The sect leader was both angry and amused. "What kind of strange words did you learn from fifth junior sister? Who's appeasing and compromise? Alright, quickly come in, don't let the disciples outside see you as a joke." With that, an invisible but irresistible force pulled Ao Guanhai back. As for the disciples outside the hall, naturally they were talking about it, but they didn't get the gist of it, so they could only speculate. Wen Yin's gossipy spirit was also burning. The girl's eyes shone as she turned around and asked, "Senior brother Wang Lu, what do you think?" "Hey, senior brother Wang Lu." Wang Lu had long run away. At this time in the Spirit Sword Hall, many elders of the Lingjian school had gathered, sitting side by side on one side of the hall. On the other side there was only one person. That person was tall, with white hair and a youthful face. Facing the several Spirit Sword elders, there was a hint of arrogance in his eyes. Behind him, two young disciples quietly stood, not saying a word. Before long, that person slowly opened his mouth and asked, "It's been a long time, I wonder what your sect's decision is?" His voice was aggressive, especially when he unscrupulously glanced at them, which was even more rude. The several elders looked somewhat unhappy, but sect leader Feng Yin indifferently chuckled. "Taoist Master Jifeng, there are some things that still need to be verified, please don't be impatient." Taoist Master Jifeng's eyes flashed. "Still need to be verified?" "Feng Yin, Taoist Master, you said that 4 hours ago and now you're still saying it. It's an obvious fact, why do you need to verify it for so long? I think you guys just want to cover up?" Before he could finish, a hooded elder from the Lingjian school couldn't help but say, "Whether it's obvious or not, it's not up to you alone to decide." Taoist Master Jifeng sneered. "You don't even dare to show your face in public, yet you want to cooperate with me? Inferior people are really unbearable." Upon hearing this remark, the several Lingjian school elders simultaneously stood up. Taoist Master Jifeng, however, wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he sternly asked, "Do you guys want to bully us because we are few in number?" "Haha, what are you talking about, Taoist Master Jifeng?" Feng Yin Taoist Master laughed, motioned his junior brothers to sit down and then said, "How could you dare to bully us?" Taoist Master Jifeng is a senior elder of the Shengjing sect. His visit to our Spirit Sword sect represents the Shengjing sect, the leader of the Immortal Cultivation sect. Our two sects are both part of the 5 uniques of the Union of 10,000 Immortals, so how could we bully each other? One of the 5 uniques? Taoist Master Jifeng squeezed out a sneer from his nostrils. "Very well, for the time being, I'll still consider your Lingjian school as one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. But since you said we're one of the 5 uniques, then I'd like to ask, your sect's elder came to pick a fight, destroyed my Shengjing sect's division in the White Moon Country, and even spread malicious rumors to ruin my sect's reputation. Is this the way of being one of the 5 uniques?" Feng Yin Taoist Master let out a laugh and was ready to fool him. However, the youngest elder, Hua Yun, couldn't help but say, "Humph, whether it's a rumor or not, you know it in your heart." Taoist Master Jifeng flew into a rage. "This is the result of your verification? It seems like you guys are going to cover up to the end." As soon as he finished speaking, a fierce and valiant aura assaulted them. The complexion of the several Lingjian school elders changed. However, the sect leader Feng Yin chuckled and said, "Taoist Master Jifeng, please don't be impatient. Our result will soon come out, and when the time comes, we'll give you an explanation." Taoist Master Jifeng sneered and was about to say something, but he found out that Feng Yin's eyes behind the glasses were staring at him. Unexpectedly, his body was somewhat out of control. Taoist Master Jifeng's jade mansion suddenly trembled. He swept it with his divine sense, but didn't find anything unusual. Was it an illusion? However, in this moment of daze, Taoist Master Jifeng knew that the opportunity had passed. He clenched his teeth. "Very well, I'll wait for you for a quarter of an hour." "Ha, Taoist Master Jifeng, why are you in such a hurry? There's no harm in waiting for a while. Come serve the tea." Chapter 65. At the same time, in the Heavenly Policy Hall of the Spirit Sword Mountain. Is the above the whole thing? Sitting in the middle of the Heavenly Policy Hall, the second elder of the Lingjian school, Lu Xian, slowly wrote on the sincerity paper with a green bamboo pen. He then looked up and asked the person standing in front of the hall. Being stared at by the reward giver elder's deep gaze, the person in front of the hall indifferently smiled. "Not everything, after all, we need to keep some personal privacy. But that's the main thing." Alas. Lu Xian sighed and picked up the thick stack of sincerity paper on the table. If that's the case, then things are really troublesome. Beside Lu Xian, the disciplinary elder Fang, he coldly humphed. Troublesome? That's also their trouble. Who would have thought that the dignified Shengjing sect would actually do such a dirty thing? Colluding with the mortal world's government to deceive ignorant people, selling low-quality spirit root at a high price to swindle money, and even secretly conducting human experiments. This is clearly the method of the devil's path. Lu Xian sighed. Junior brother Fang He, don't get excited. This matter is only done by the Xingjing sect's division in a small country. It's just a small matter, so it shouldn't rise to the height of the devil's path. Fang He immediately indignantly said, Senior brother, why do you say that? Whether it's the headquarters or the division, even if the scale is small, isn't it the Xingjing sect's signboard? The people below do whatever they want. Don't tell me that Hichu Daoren isn't responsible for not being strict enough? Not to mention that a mere division actually drew out a Yuanying stage elder. Senior brother, can't you see the problem behind this? Moreover, if this kind of disregard for human life is not the devil's path, then what is the devil's path? Must one personally kill until blood flows like a river to be considered as the devil's path? Lu Xian wryly smiled. Junior brother, if things go according to your understanding, then we can't just leave it at that. Moreover, right now this is only our Lingjian school's word. How can you win people's trust? The Xingjing sect's division in the White Moon country colluding with the mortal world's government. Who would believe this kind of thing? Junior brother, weren't you also shocked at first and even wanted junior sister to make a great heart demon oath? Fang He choked for a moment. He looked at his senior brother who was smiling bitterly, and then looked at his fifth junior sister who was smiling cheekily next to him. His face was somewhat embarrassed as he said, Alas, although junior sister is usually misbehaving, it's impossible for her to joke about this kind of thing. I still trust her. As a result, before the fifth junior sister could jump up and cheer, Fang He roared, Don't be too proud. I can trust the outside world, but that doesn't mean I can trust the inside world. After dealing with that Jifeng, I will definitely not be lenient when it comes to impeaching you. Holy *T, are you serious? Waving his hand to interrupt the quarrel between the martial sister and martial brother, Lu Xian sighed. Junior brother, you're willing to believe in junior sister, that's very good. However, it's useless for us to only trust each other. This time, junior sister impulsively destroyed the Xingjing sect's division head, which is actually giving people a handle. Why do you think that Jifeng came looking for us? He's very self-righteous. Fang He said, I don't need to care about his wishful thinking. No matter how much reason he has, could it be that it's greater than the heaven's justice? In my opinion, this time, fifth junior sister did a very good job. Seeing injustice on the road, why worry too much? Enforcing justice on behalf of the heaven's justice, no matter where you are, you can be self-confident. You don't need to think twice. The fifth junior sister was in high spirits. Oh yeah, justice will prevail. Fang He turned his head to the fifth junior sister and roared, You better be honest with me. Doing well doesn't mean doing right. Just wait for your impeachment. Holy *T, senior brother, are you a genius or a tsundere? Lu Xian sighed and no longer paid attention to this pair of martial sister and martial brother's quarrel. When he gave the position of disciplinary elder to junior brother Fang He, it was because he fancied Fang He, who regarded the rules as the most important thing. Even if the sect leader did something wrong, he would still reprimand him and would never let his heart be wronged. However, in the end, with this kind of character, he could only be the disciplinary elder, enforcing the law internally. If he did the same thing externally, it would absolutely not work. To talk about reason, the facts recorded on the sincerity paper were indeed the hard truth. This time, when the fifth junior sister went out to wander in the White Moon country, she saw the Xingjing sect's division doing all kinds of evil. Therefore, for various reasons, she directly destroyed the division and even injured some people. In the entire Wanxian League, there was no unified law enforcement organization, and there was no universally recognized law enforcement rules. This was completely understandable and even idealistic, worthy of encouragement. However, the reality was not that simple. Your heroic sword was indeed refreshing, but all the evidence has also been destroyed. Right now, the only thing that could prove everything was the stack of sincerity paper that was dictated by the fifth junior sister. This thing could win the trust of their own people, but it was worthless in the outside world. However, that being said, Lu Xian didn't think that he should blame anyone. With the fifth junior sister's character, she usually would not meddle in the affairs of the mortal world. This time, her action was so fierce, so obviously there was a reason for it. Moreover, if she didn't say it, perhaps no one could make her say it. In any case, the key facts were already very clear. Next, it was up to the sect leader to decide. After verifying the situation with the parties involved, the second elder and the third elder left the Heavenly Policy Hall with the stack of precious sincerity paper and flew toward the Four Divisions Peak. With the information in his hand, Lucien knew that once he left, he wouldn't be able to give up. But so what? The Lingjian school didn't want to stir up trouble, but they were also never afraid of trouble. If someone knew the difficulty and retreated, then that would be good for everyone. Otherwise, the Heavenly Sword Hall elders haven't exercised their muscles and bones for a long time. On the other side, the fifth elder regained her freedom. According to Lucien's words, other than the 4 divisions peak, she could go wherever she wanted. The reason was simple enough. Letting this guy go to the 4 divisions peak and confront Taoist Master Jifeng was like a bolt from the blue. If they didn't kill each other, it wouldn't be over. Although the 5th junior sister was by no means an evil person, with her mischievous and tasteless style of doing things, sometimes she was more troublesome than a villain. When the bored 5th elder walked out of the Heavenly Policy Hall after being interrogated, she saw her beloved disciple, Wang Lu, waiting outside the door. On his head was a triangular hat, around his neck was a colorful wreath, and in his hand, there was a small firework that no one knew where he got it from. When Wang Lu saw his master outside the door, his face lit up, and with a bang sound he lit the firework in his hand and put it in the sky. Congratulations, Master, for once again stirring up trouble and bringing disaster to the sect. I hope you can retire from the elder position as soon as possible and live a carefree life, ha. The 5th elder suddenly jumped 3 feet high. What the hell? You evil disciple, you want a rebel? Wang Lu very firmly nodded his head. I have specifically inquired about it. Although there is no specific provision in the sect's rules, for those successor disciples who lost their elder position because of their master's crimes, the sect will appoint a new elder to take their place. So, Master, please go in peace. F*ck, I won't go anywhere. I still have to receive the sect elder's allowance for 10,000 years. The master said somewhat exasperatedly, but at the same time he was resentful of Wang Lu for failing to meet his expectations. Moreover, who told you that I stirred up trouble? I obviously saw injustice and pulled out my sword to help, okay? Wang Lu thought for a while. On your way down the mountain you saw a prostitute, so you pulled out your sword and threatened her. After you had sex with her, her family came to find you? You really have no confidence in me at all. Wang Lu smiled. I only have confidence in Master's ability to break the limit. Don't worry, one day you will surpass your master. The 5th elder's interest waned. Alas, since ancient times sages have always been lonely. Seeing that his master seemed to really be in a bad mood, Wang Lu also became curious. While taking off his triangular hat and colorful wreath, he asked, what actually happened? Actually, it's nothing. This time, when I went down the mountain to refine medicine, when I passed by the White Moon country, I found out that there's a newly established Thousand Spirits sect. Originally, the 9 regions is very big and there are many immortal cultivation sects, so the rise and fall of this kind of small sect is not worth paying attention to. However, their banner in a certain country is very strange, so people couldn't help but pay attention to it. Mortal Cultivation Sect. Wang Lu laughed in spite of himself. What's so strange about that? Nowadays, in the mortal world, there are countless groups of swindlers. Before I went up the mountain, I met a 7-star sect in my hometown. They used a few 6 harmonies pills to swindle money and women. However, the 5th elder seriously shook her head. It's not that simple. The kind of sect that you mentioned can only be popular in some remote mountain villages. Once they reach the bustling city, the citizens are more knowledgeable, so these tricks can't be deceived. However, the Thousand Spirit sect that I saw is different. They directly developed their business in the White Moon country's capital, and then radiated their influence through the big cities to the remote mountain villages. Their way of doing things is high-end. Wang Lu was surprised. This White Moon country, I remember it's just a small country, but in the capital, there should be some capable people who can see through the scam, right? The 5th elder sneered. Yes, there are indeed capable people, including the White Moon country's royal consecrated low-level cultivators and Xiantian stage martial artists. In the past, they have also seen through some low-level scams. However, this time, because of their existence, things have become worse. Because in the White Moon country, the people who spared no effort to wave the flag for the Thousand Spirit sect are precisely this group of capable people. With the guarantee of these people, the Thousand Spirit sect's development in the White Moon country is in full swing, unstoppable. And the reason why these people support the Thousand Spirit sect is very simple, because they have personally experienced the Thousand Spirit sect's immortal cultivation method, and they have really benefited from it. It is said that a certain peak foundation establishment stage cultivator, who was conferred the title of state preceptor by the White Moon country, had a breakthrough in one fell swoop, reaching the Shudan stage. At that time I felt that it was strange and I thought, could it be that artificial spirit roots have really made a breakthrough here? So, I went deeper to investigate and as a result, I really found something good. The fifth elder said that it was something good, but her expression and tone were completely different. And very quickly, she revealed the answer to the mystery, which was really frightening. It's the heaven-burning blood technique. As a top student, Wang Lu was the first to react. What the hell is that, the life-breaking divine art? That's right, it's that demonic technique that uses Xiantian lifespan to exchange for power. The Thousand Spirit sect's development in the White Moon country is actually very simple. They use a large number of low-level artificial spirit roots to guide mortals to cross the threshold of cultivation, and then use the heaven-burning blood technique to provide the energy needed to advance in cultivation. Those cultivators see that their cultivation speed is very fast, but they don't realize that they are rushing towards death, thinking that they have gained a huge advantage. Wang Lu frowned. I heard that the effect of that life-breaking divine technique is extremely overbearing. For the Thousand Spirit sect to be so popular, they should have already plunged into misery and suffering, so how could they develop so fast? Of course it's not the original version of the heaven-burning blood technique, or else it's interesting. The technique that the Thousand Spirit sect spread in the White Moon country has been improved by an expert, so the conversion rate of Xiantian lifespan is much higher. Moreover, it also has a limit, so it won't directly drain the cultivators dry. At most, the cultivators will feel weak, and they can recover after resting for 2 days. Moreover, as the cultivators' cultivation level increases, their Xiantian lifespan will also continue to increase. Some talented cultivators can even offset the consumption of their lifespan, so naturally they won't feel any abnormalities. Wang Lu asked, since it has been improved, isn't that good? Good my ass, if this kind of evil method was really effective, then there would be no need for serious cultivators in the world. Once you encounter a bottleneck, you can burn a few years of your Xiantian lifespan to steadily pass it. How could there be such a cheap thing? Why do you think this heaven-burning blood technique is called a demonic method? That's because the seemingly perfect cultivation base is actually a castle on the beach, easily collapsing. Even if the cultivation technique is improved and the lifespan consumption is reduced, the essence of this cultivation technique hasn't changed. There's no future for it at all. Whoever cultivates it is an idiot. Regarding the topic of cultivating the mind, Fifth Elder was generally quite serious. At this time, after fiercely criticizing the heaven-burning blood technique, she simply gave a qualitative evaluation. As an audience member, although Wang Lu was the top student of the Spirit Sword sect, he obviously couldn't compare to his master in terms of cultivation, so he nodded and accepted this point of view. However, master, with your character, after knowing the truth, at most, you would laugh at them for being stupid and ignorant. You probably wouldn't take the initiative to help them, right? Fifth Elder confidently nodded. Of course, what does the life and death of those idiots in the White Moon country have to do with me? Even if the whole country's people were sacrificed, I would just dip my steamed bun in their blood. Therefore, at that time, I just called them idiots and turned around to leave. Wang Lu was surprised. Then how did it lead to so many troubles? Fifth Elder thought for a moment and then replied, perhaps it has something to do with the occasion? At that time, I scolded them at the headquarters of the Thousand Spirits sect. Then, there was a sect leader who came out to scold me, saying how ignorant and foolish I was, that I would suffer the wrath of the heavens and so on. I was too lazy to talk nonsense with him and just wanted to see who's the real deal. That good-for-nothing only has the cultivation level of King Pill, so I let him use his 2 hands, 2 legs and a pair of beautiful breasts. Even in his human stick form, I still easily won against him. As a result, after I beat the young one, the old one came out, and then a peak King Pill sect leader popped out. I don't know why this guy especially likes the sect leader, but in any case, since he wants to fight with me, then I'll accompany him. As a result, this peak King Pill sect leader was not much stronger than the sect leader, so I easily won in my human stick form. However, after I won against the sect leader, a certain Yuanying stage cultivator from Xingjing sect couldn't sit still. While talking, Fifth Elder sneered. Oh what happened after that? Needless to say, Wang Lu could already guess it. Because his master caused too much trouble at the headquarters of the Thousand Spirit sect, forcing the Xingjing sect, who was behind the scenes, to appear, things would inevitably develop in this direction. Wang Lu quickly sorted out the things in his mind and couldn't help but sigh. The Xingjing sect has brought this upon themselves for not being strict, but I really didn't expect that master also has a chivalrous heart. Fifth Elder gawked. She didn't expect her disciple to give her such an evaluation. Hey, what does this have to do with chivalrous? I've already told you, I'm just laughing at them for being stupid. I don't have the mind to care about the life and death of the ignorant people of the White Moon country. With that, seeing the faint smile on Wang Lu's face, fifth elder snorted, stepped on her bamboo sword and flew away, no longer wasting her breath. Chapter 66. After his master left, Wang Lu still somewhat sighed with emotion. It's really not something she would do. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he heard a girl behind him coldly snorted. You're prejudiced? Wang Lu turned his head with a smile. He was not surprised by the sudden appearance of the lady boss. This incompetent innkeeper ran her Ru family in like a dead dog. In addition to wandering around the mountain, what else could she do? Therefore, in the Spirit Sword Mountain, it was not unusual to meet her. Not to mention that his master was in trouble this time. As a sisterly person, she must come to see her. Hearing her speak for his master, Wang Lu shrugged. Not to mention others, there are hundreds of people in the Lingjian school. How many of them don't have prejudice against her? Alas, Wang Wu, that fool, does things as she pleases and especially likes to make mischief, so she deserves to be misunderstood. But, you're her successor disciple, so there's no need for you to make a fuss with other ignorant people, right? Also, she must have her reasons for being like this. Wang Lu deeply frowned. Is the source of her difficulties the justice and axiom of this world? Hey, she's still your master. Seeing that Wang Lu was too prejudiced, Feng Ling, well, if she respected her own opinion, it would be little Ling Er. Out of sisterhood, she earnestly explained to Wang Lu. I won't talk about other things. Let's start with the non-phase method that you're currently cultivating. You've now reached a small success in the non-phase sword bone. How do you feel? Wang Lu sneered and was about to open his mouth when he was interrupted by little Ling Er. Speak with your conscience. Very well, although the effect is extreme, it is undeniable that this is a very outstanding cultivation method. Although I haven't cultivated the other cultivation methods of my sect, I know that this non-phase sword bone alone is probably the best in the immortal cultivation world. Little Ling Er nodded. That's true. But in terms of the effect, at least in terms of defensive ability, it's almost unparalleled in the immortal cultivation world. So, you should also know how much effort she put into this method, revising it more than 100 times. It sounds like a joke, but without great perseverance, it's absolutely impossible to reach this step. Yes, I can understand. No, actually, you don't really understand her difficulties. She has been through hundreds of years to develop her non-phase method to its present stage is certainly admirable, but among the 10 elders of the Lingjian school, why is she the only one who cultivates a self-created method? In terms of aptitude, could it be that she was stronger than the sect leader's star spiritual root? In terms of perception, could she compare to the fourth elder's brilliant sword heart? Those talented people have never created their own skills, so why should she be different? Wang Lu thought for a moment. Because you have no other choice? That's right, she doesn't have a choice at all. Let's not talk about comprehension and opportunities for now. Her spirit root is actually only of the 5th grade, and it doesn't belong to the 5 elements. It's just a mutated spirit root. She was able to enter Lingjian school because of various coincidences and her own hard work. However, if she wants to progress on the path of cultivation, Lingjian school can't help her much. She can only rely on herself. Little Ling Er sighed. With this set of non-phase method, she constantly made breakthroughs on the path of cultivation, and eventually even sat firmly in the position of Elder of the Heavenly Sword Hall. But in fact, to reach her current position, she has to spend more effort than others for every step forward. Why does she hate the heaven-burning blood technique so much? Because compared to the bumpy road of her cultivation, the kind of method that claims to be able to soar her cultivation base by burning a few years of her lifespan is simply an insult to the immortal path. Hearing you say that, I suddenly feel that Master's image is a lot taller and more powerful. Little Ling Er bitterly smiled. Actually, it's a lot more bitter. Do you know, although the non-phase method has endless wonderful uses, and can even make her, who has a 5th grade spirit root, the peak of the king pill, but the consumption required for cultivation is several times or even dozens of times more than other cultivators. For example, the 8th layer of the non-phase sword bone is only the end of the body refining stage and the starting point of the chi cultivating stage. But do you know how much the non-phase bone improving pill is worth? Wang Lu gawked. You really didn't calculate it carefully. Because this non-phase bone improving pill was invented by his master herself. Not to mention that it didn't have a grade, he didn't even know the formula. He only knew that the main ingredient was the vermilion fruit, and the value of the vermilion fruit. F***CK, doesn't that mean I ate at least a few thousand spirit stones in a month? Little Ling Er said, yes, you're only at the 8th layer, but Wang Wu has more than 100 layers. So you should understand why she's so poor, right? F*ck poor and destitute, yet she still drinks wine every day. 500 spirit stones for a pot of spirit spring wine. She should go sell her body, okay? Because at that time she needed spirit wine to nourish her chi. Otherwise, do you think a poor ghost like her deserves to drink wine? She couldn't even bear to buy herself a new set of clothes, okay? She only has one set of clothes on her body. Wang Lu suddenly felt as if he was struck by lightning. If that was really the case, then before she went out to wander, he quietly stole her original underwear. Then during her wander, wouldn't it be? Diske, no wonder her character is so violent that she would hit anyone she sees. A vacuum woman is always not easy to deal with. Spirit Sword Mountain for Division's Peak Spirit Sword Hall. Wearing a cyan gown, Taoist Master Jifeng has been waiting in the lobby for quite some time. It has been half an hour since the last time he issued the ultimatum. The verification result of Lingjian School has yet to be delivered. However, Jifeng himself didn't feel surprised at all. On the contrary, although the bottom line has been broken again and again, he has been waiting more and more leisurely. Lingjian School's delay could only mean that they are also hesitant on how to deal with this diplomatic dispute. Regarding this so-called Wanxian League's 5 uniques, the longer they hesitate, the higher the possibility of them giving in. This was also Taoist Master Jifeng's many years of experience in dealing with other sections. This set of tricks was not new. As the leader of the 9 regions' immortal cultivation path, Xingjing sect's influence has spread all over the 9 regions. Needless to say, their headquarters in the central region, even in a relatively remote place like the Blue River region, there was a Xingjing sect branch. With such a wide range of development, naturally, there would inevitably be friction with other local forces. Taoist Master Jifeng, as the person in charge of the southern region of the Blue River region, has dealt with many big and small sect disputes. He has personally appeared more than 10 times. And almost every time, it was the same rhythm. As long as he aggressively pounced on the other side would naturally concede. This has nothing to do with reason but with strength. Of course, it was not because of Taoist Master Jifeng's Yuanying stage strength, but because of the Xingjing sect's glittering signboard. In fact, more than 5 years ago when he was temporarily transferred to the Southern Heaven region, he had a friction with the local Beast Master School. Taoist Master Jifeng single-handedly broke into the sect's main altar and confronted several Yuanying stage sect leader elders, as well as more than 10 King Pill elders. Obviously, his strength was far inferior to the other side, but in the end he forced the Beast Master School to concede. This was all because of the Xingjing sect. Now, it seemed like this trick was not only effective against the 3rd or 4th rank sects like the Beast Master School, but also against the Lingjian School, one of the 5 uniques. Of course, if it wasn't necessary, Taoist Master Jifeng really didn't want to provoke this ancient sect. 100 years ago, the golden generation of the Lingjian School came into being. It was simply a gathering of heroes, and no one doubted that in another 100 or 200 years, the Lingjian School would have the qualification to keep pace with the Xingjing sect. Unfortunately, the sudden change almost destroyed this thousands of years old sect. More than 100 talented disciples fell one after another, leaving behind only the 10 elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall, and the sect leader with the highest cultivation base was only at the deity stage. However, the Xingjing sect had evaluated the Lingjian school. Although because this sect was too low-key, the evaluation result was very uncertain, at least one thing was without a doubt. The sect leader Feng Yin could not be regarded as an ordinary deity stage cultivator. He might as well be regarded as a genuine unity stage cultivator. As for the rest of the peak Yuanying stage elders, it was not too conservative to treat them as deity stage cultivators. Therefore, with his mere 4th level Yuanying stage cultivation, he simply didn't have the qualification to be presumptuous in the Spirit Sword Hall. The only thing he could rely on was the Xingjing sect's signboard. And this signboard was very useful for 2nd or 3rd rate sects like the Beast Master School. As for the Lingjian School, actually, before he came here he wasn't very confident. Unfortunately, even if he didn't have the confidence, he still had to come. The change in the White Moon country had forced him into a dead end. If he didn't charge forward, he would fall into the abyss, beyond redemption. Because the truth was indeed like what the young elder of the Lingjian school said, he was very clear about it. In the White Moon country he supported the puppet sect, used a crooked method to lure a large number of mortals to take the artificial spirit route, and then used the improved version of the heaven-burning blood method to stimulate their cultivation base, creating the illusion that mortals could also cultivate to immortality to incite more people. Each of these things he was very clear about it. The one who manipulated everything behind the scenes was him. And the reason for this was very simple. He needed materials, a lot of materials, to support an important experiment. Once the experiment was completed, he could become the greatest inventor or improver of the Shengjing sect in the last 100 years, which was exactly what he urgently needed. He didn't know when it started, but he could no longer smoothly advance on the path of immortal cultivation. 4th level Yuanying stage. The last time he advanced his cultivation base seemed to be 100 years ago. Taoist Master Jifeng was very clear that this was the bottleneck of talent. After all, he couldn't compare to those monstrous geniuses in the sect. He had already reached his limit. However, this limit was far from enough. In other places, perhaps a 4th level Yuanying stage cultivation base could be regarded as amazing, but in the Shengjing sect, there were a lot of people who were stronger than him. Especially in the last 10 years, some genius cultivators advanced by leaps and bounds, which made him feel a deep threat. He was now an elder of the sect, assigned to the Blue River region to be in charge of half of the region's territory. Although he was not as prominent as his fellow disciples in the central region, he could still be regarded as a real power. Especially in the remote mountains, it seemed that he could be at ease as a local tyrant. However, in fact, in a sect that advocated competition, survival of the fittest, any kind of complacency with the status quo was a precursor to being eliminated. Especially among the younger generation disciples, there were already many who covetously eyed his position. Although their cultivation base was far from his, the Shengjing sect was usually more willing to use those who were determined to make progress. In order to keep his position, Taoist Master Jifeng racked his brains. However, the bottleneck of his cultivation base was like a natural moat that could not be broken. Therefore he racked his brains, which led to that scene in the White Moon country. Taoist Master Jifeng wasn't good at other things, but in the research of artificial spirit root, he was very good at it. Unfortunately, because of the lack of materials, although he was full of theories, he was unable to make a substantial breakthrough. But now, in the White Moon country, the sect rules absolutely forbade him. However, if he eventually achieved results in his research, then after reporting it, the sect would usually turn a blind eye to some side effects. However, now was not a good time to expose himself. There was still some distance before the final result, and he simply couldn't come up with any convincing evidence. What's worse was that bitch from the Lingjin school had caused too much of a stir. Once this matter was spread out, the Shengjing sect's reputation would suffer a blow, and he wouldn't be able to redeem himself even if he died 100 times. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to preemptively strike before things got worse. With the Shengjing sect's power, he would overwhelm all the unstable factors in the Lingjin school and bury the truth of the matter forever. There was no such thing as heaven-burning blood technique, and of course, there was no such thing as a record of a mortal's cultivation to immortality. What he had was just a scam set up by a cult organization in the White Moon country, which was eventually seen through by the Shengjing sect's division leader, Taoist Master Jifeng. As for a certain spirit sword sect elders claim that the Shengjing sect colluded with the cult and the government, that was, of course, nonsense. He wanted the Lingjin school to publicly apologize for this. Of course, realistically speaking, he might as well relax the conditions a bit. For example, the Shengjing sect and the Lingjin school jointly discovered the truth, jointly destroyed the cult organization, and saved hundreds of thousands of innocent people in the White Moon country. As for the previous statement from a certain elder, it was just a momentary misunderstanding. This plan was undoubtedly more realistic. However, only by asking for a sky-high price would he be able to return the money. Taoist Master Jifeng absolutely didn't want people to see through his bottom line, therefore he was aggressive. While he was thinking about the next step, a burst of footsteps came from outside the hall. Taoist Master Jifeng turned his head and saw the number 2 and number 3 figures of the Lingjin school walking hand in hand. Among them, the second elder, Lu Xian, was holding a stack of sincerity papers with a solemn expression. Chapter 67. Seeing the second and third elders of the Lingjin school enter the door, Taoist Master Jifeng gawked for a moment, but then he realized that the Lingjin school's verification results had finally come out. After dragging on for so long, the final result should be as he expected. The Lingjin school chose to compromise and didn't let the fifth elder come forward, which should be to avoid trouble, turning a big problem into a small one. However, somehow the two elders Lu Xian and Fang He's solemn faces always made his heart somewhat uneasy. Lu Xian, holding the sincerity paper, slowly walked in front of Feng Yin Taoist master, wanting to hand over the final verification materials to the sect leader for review. However, Feng Yin waved his hand. No need, just give it to Taoist Master Jifeng for review. The corner of Lu Xian's mouth suddenly revealed an imperceptible smile, but unfortunately Taoist Master Jifeng didn't see it. When he received the stack of sincerity paper, Taoist Master Jifeng had already predicted the final result. The sect leader didn't even look at the stack of materials, which obviously meant that he had given in. That being the case, with a trace of a smile, Taoist Master Jifeng turned his eyes to the sincerity paper. However, with just a glance, his expression immediately froze. The next moment, Taoist Master Jifeng's hands began to involuntarily tremble, and his originally pale complexion was flushed with anger. Everything that happened in the White Moon Country was recorded on it without any concealment. Not only the fact that the Thousand Spirit sect colluded with the White Moon Country's local government was recorded, even the fact that the Thousand Spirit sect colluded with the White Moon Country's palace servants to control the members of the royal family was also exposed. This was not a joke. Although the Thousand Spirit sect was only an insignificant faction, it was a big taboo for an immortal cultivator to arbitrarily interfere in the mortal world's politics. Once it was investigated, as the backer he simply wouldn't be able to hide. Of course, some people might ask, which of the big sects in the Wanxian League had nothing to do with the mortal world's politics? For example, the Shengjing sect that was entrenched in the central region clearly controlled many countries, so what taboo was this? The correct answer was, if you were as powerful as the Shengjing sect, you could also ignore this taboo. In fact, among the top-ranking sects in the Wanxian League, other than the Lingjian school who kept a low profile, the other sects would more or less control some mortal countries to provide the necessary resources. Among them, Shengjing sect's expansion was the strongest. They even set up a continent-wide hegemony strategy. They had branches all over the 9 continents and had unclear connections with countless countries. However, the problem was that all of these connections were in the hands of the main altar of the immortal sect in the middle continent. The people in charge of the branch were not allowed to act on their own. Of course, in a place far away from the emperor, it wasn't a big deal if they wanted to make some money. However, to do what the Thousand Spirit sect had done, it had far exceeded the bottom line of tolerance. With his own qualifications, he was far from being able to suppress this matter. When the time came, the sect rules would be like a mountain, and he, thinking to this, Taoist Master Jifeng's jade mansion trembled, his yuanying flickered, and cold sweat gushed out of his body like a spring. He almost couldn't hold the sincerity paper in his hand. A moment later, Taoist Master Jifeng converged his primordial spirit and used his supreme heart to suppress the vibration of his nascent soul. Then the fear and panic disappeared, replaced by endless anger. Lingjian school, you forced me to do this. You guys are... After gritting his teeth and squeezing out a few words, Taoist Master Jifeng angrily stood up and loudly roared, "You guys really want to cover up to the end? What a joke." Feng Yin Taoist Master's smile suddenly turned cold. Cover up. Only when you've made a mistake can you talk about covering up. Now that the facts are clear, Junior Sister's chivalrous act is not only not wrong, but also meritorious. How could we cover up such a person, Taoist Master Jifeng? So what if it's written on a piece of paper? Do you think it counts? Taoist Master Jifeng didn't back down as he roared back at the deity stage sect leader. You guys have your own people, your own paper, isn't what you write the same thing? The angrier Taoist Master Jifeng was, the more leisurely Feng Yin Taoist Master became. Yes, it's the same thing. However, Taoist Master Jifeng, you claim that 5th Junior Sister maliciously slandered you, isn't that also the same thing? Or do you have clear evidence to prove something? Taoist Master Jifeng was stunned. Of course he didn't have any evidence. Are you kidding me? Does the Shengjing sect still need evidence? The leader of the Wanxian League was the biggest evidence. However, at this time, Feng Yin Taoist Master changed his previous attitude of knowing that he was a good friend of the Shengjing sect. Taoist Master Jifeng was suddenly at a loss. However, he quickly found an attack point. Just now you didn't even look at that material, yet you know what's written on it. Do you dare to say that there's nothing more to it? Feng Yin Taoist Master lightly said, "Why would I need to look at what's written on it? From the beginning I have complete trust in my junior sister. This stack of paper is written for you to see, not for us to see. I believe that any elder in the Heavenly Sword Hall would not doubt their own junior sister." The nearby hooded elder couldn't help but laugh. "I told you, senior brother sect leader, you will not let us down." The youngest female elder repeatedly nodded. "Yes, although 5th senior sister is cold and ungrateful, I absolutely trust her." 6th elder Luli said, "Oh, in the past she has helped me a lot. Although she has a lot of problems, she is a trustworthy senior sister." 4th elder Zhou Ming said with a smile, "I second that." Seeing that several of his junior brothers and sisters have expressed their stance, The third elder Fang He awkwardly hesitated for a long time, unable to speak. Although they had expressed their stance in the Heavenly Policy Hall, at that time, there were only 3 people in the hall, and at this time they were surrounded by so many junior brothers and sisters, which was really. The nearby Lu Xian somewhat laughingly patted his shoulder, and then said, "Everyone knows that my relationship with 5th junior sister is the worst. Almost every month I would complain about her 2 or 3 times. However, this time I completely trust junior sister." Finally, Fang He reluctantly said, "I also believe her, okay? As long as she can change her bad habits and abide by the sect's rules." The voice behind him became smaller and smaller, and no one cared about what he said. The attitude of the Heavenly Sword Hall was so obvious that there was no possibility of mediation. Taoist Master Jifeng gritted his teeth. "Even if this means becoming enemies with the Shengjing sect? Just for a King Pill elder?" "Ah." Feng Yin Taoist Master suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. "Taoist Master Jifeng, you should ask your Shengjing sect. Are you, the leader of the Immortal Path, really ready to be the enemy of our Spirit Sword sect? Just for a mere 4th-level Yuanying stage like you?" When the last word came out, Feng Yin Taoist Master's anger surged up. In a split second, the entire Spirit Sword Mountain trembled. Facing this pressure, Taoist Master Jifeng's vision turned black and he almost lost consciousness. "Damn, I've kicked an iron plate." When he regained his composure, Taoist Master Jifeng's complexion was miserable. He knew that his wishful thinking had been completely broken. Sure enough, the 5 Uniques and the Beast Master School could not be mentioned in the same breath. Even if everyone thought that they were unworthy of their name, strong on the outside but weak on the inside. However, the 5 Uniques were indeed the 5 Uniques. Behind their great reputation was a very deep sect heritage. However, things haven't reached a dead end yet. On the contrary, at this time he had to persevere to the end because this matter was not only about him, but also the confrontation between the 2 sects. The matter in the White Moon country had been exposed, and he was doomed to be punished by the sect. However, the research results that he had in his hands might be able to offset part of the punishment. The problem was, at present he was representing the Shengjing sect in the confrontation with the Lingjian school. Once he retreated, it would bring disgrace to the sect's reputation, which would make him feel extremely uncomfortable. On the contrary, if he could stubbornly insist on this matter and escalate it into a battle of reputation between the 2 sects, perhaps he would be able to survive. The Shengjing sect had been overbearing for a long time. Although they were not lenient toward their own scum, they were even more intolerant of other sects' offense. Therefore, although Taoist Master Jifeng's anger was boundless, his heart had gradually calmed down. "Good. Since you're so rude and unreasonable, then our Shengjing sect." Just as his voice fell, he suddenly heard a woman's voice from outside the door. "Interesting, how old are you, yet you're always talking about our Shengjing sect? You've been cultivating for so long, haven't you learned to speak with your own identity?" Accompanied by a mocking laughter, a woman in white riding on an emerald green sword light flew into the Spirit Sword Hall. "Has senior brothers and junior sisters, just now, your speech, we accidentally heard it. Alas, thank you for your trust, especially senior brother Fang He. I can see that it's really difficult for you to speak against your conscience. But why should our Spirit Sword sect, for such a trivial matter, go against the Shengjing sect?" With that, the woman turned to look at Taoist Master Jifeng. "I say, do you really want to hide behind the sect's shell for the rest of your life? Now that this mess is caused by the 2 of us, let's settle it, no need to implicate the sect." Then the woman's emerald green bamboo sword light flashed, pointing straight at Jifeng. "You and I, one-on-one, winner takes all, loser kneel down, do you dare or not?" Being pointed at by the woman's emerald green bamboo sword light, coupled with that contemptuous smile, Jifeng's jade mansion, which he had suppressed with great difficulty, once again surged up. Moreover, his reason told him that this seemed to be a straightforward solution. He didn't need to think about how to fight against the high-level elders of the sect, nor did he need to think about how to suppress the Lingjian school's counterattack. As long as he won against this woman, all the problems would be solved. In fact, this was also a commonly used method in the immortal cultivation world. When wrangling couldn't be cleared, then use fists to reason. In the end, this was the immutable truth of the immortal cultivation world. The so-called Wanxian League was nothing more than the largest rogue organization in the 9 regions. Weren't the 5 Uniques of the Wanxian League often called the 5 Big Rogues? And the winner-take-all duel proposed by Wang Wu was the product of such a big environment. When the 2 sides of the dispute didn't want to waste more energy on wrangling, then they would use a duel. The winner takes all, even if there was no reason, it would still be reasonable. The loser could only swallow his grievances. Of course, this kind of duel must be agreed by both sides and be bound by the Big Heart Demon Oath to ensure the basic rules and order. Otherwise, wouldn't the dignified cultivators of the Wanxian League be no different from the savages in the Savage Land? Moreover, that fifth elder was only at the peak of King Pill stage. Although he wasn't good at fighting, his cultivation base was at the fourth stage of Yuanying stage. Moreover, he also cultivated a high-rank cultivation method and possessed a spiritual treasure. Even 10 peak King Pill stage cultivators could easily deal with him. He wasn't a small fry Yuanying stage cultivator from an ordinary sect. It was basically impossible for a cultivator from one of the 5 uniques to challenge him. Previously in the White Moon Country, he and Wang Wu exchanged 2 moves. Although the opposite party was extremely slippery and quickly escaped, in just 2 moves he had already gained the upper hand, forcing the opposite party to defend herself. Therefore, Taoist Master Jifeng didn't understand where that woman's arrogance came from. Could it be that she wanted to rely on the geographical advantage of the Lingjian school to secretly play some tricks? During the duel there was the Big Heart Demon Oath. Casually using external forces to break the rules would only make one's death more miserable. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the immortal cultivation world to have such a set of rules. Even if he wasn't proficient in fighting as a scholar, he was extremely proficient in these rules. With his cultivation base at the 4th stage of Yuanying stage, even deity stage Taoist Master Feng Yin wouldn't be able to interfere with his duel with Wang Wu. For a time, Taoist Master Jifeng had too many reasons to accept Wang Wu's challenge. However, his more than 400 years of lifespan made him especially cautious. No one would court their own death like this. There must be a trap. Especially that Wang Wu who was crafty and cunning. Although his odds of winning were extremely high, there was no need for him to take such a risk. Thinking of this, Taoist Master Jifeng couldn't help but hesitate. All of this was seen by the 5th elder, who suddenly laughed. "Oh, student Jifeng, are you afraid? I, an insignificant ant-like King Pill, challenged you, an unreachable Yuanying stage-old monster, and now you're afraid?" The 5th elder said, and then helplessly sighed, "It seems that Taoist Master King Pill can no longer satisfy you. However, considering your cowardly nature, if it was a Shudan or Foundation establishment cultivator, you probably wouldn't dare to fight. But this is easy to deal with. My Lingjian school doesn't have anything else, but rookies are everywhere. I won't choose anyone else, I'll call my good-for-nothing disciple to play with you." Rest assured, he has just crossed the threshold of Qi cultivating stage, and hasn't even begun to practice formal spells. Moreover, his aptitude is stupid and his vegetable garden is a complete mess. "Wang Lu, come in." Then a youth wearing a red and white robe came in. It was Wang Lu, who had a tacit understanding with his master. Seeing Wang Lu come in, the 5th elder patted him on the shoulder, pointed at the unusually ugly Taoist Master Jifeng, and said, "You see that old coward over there? He was shocked by Master's King Pill cultivation and doesn't dare to fight with Master alone. It just so happens that your cultivation level is low, and your aptitude is dull, so you can represent Master and exchange a few moves with him. Remember to be lenient. Good or bad, he has lived for more than 400 years, so he still has a thick face." Wang Lu suddenly understood and nodded his head. His expression was as if he was asking for something, which complimented his master. Even though Taoist Master Jifeng was a Yuanying stage cultivator and was naturally cautious, he was still angered by this clumsy and deliberate performance. However, before he could say anything, Wang Lu's words made him so angry that he almost fainted. "Master, although you are gentle and considerate and can be said to be a role model for women, you still don't understand the psychology of cowards. If you let me, a Qi cultivating stage expert, fight with him, he would be scared to the point of peeing in his pants. That would make him lose his face." Wang Wu of course didn't really expect Wang Lu, who had only cultivated for more than 2 years, to fight with a Yuanying stage-old monster. Hearing Wang Lu's words, she very cooperatively nodded her head. Good, you have a meticulous mind that even Master can't compare to. So, in your opinion, who should we let him fight? If a Qi cultivating stage cultivator can't satisfy him, do you want to find a mortal world's martial artist?" Wang Lu waved his hand. A mortal world's martial artist is not inferior to a Qi cultivating stage cultivator. They are also very good at fighting. Although that old thing from Xingjing sect has no balls, he still has a brain, so he certainly won't agree. Wang Wu pretended to be surprised. "If a mortal world's martial artist can't do it, then what should we do?" Wang Lu sneered. "Isn't that simple? Big Yellow, come in." Woof. Hearing Wang Lu's call, the ashy river dog Hachi-Chi ran in from outside the door and excitedly looked at Wang Lu. Out of nowhere, Wang Lu took out a bone and threw it to it, and then pointed at Taoist Master Jifeng. In a moment you go fight with him, remember to be lenient. Woof. In a split second, Taoist Master Jifeng's eyes turned blood red. His supreme Tao heart was unable to suppress his boiling anger. You're courting death. Chapter 68. Spirit Sword Hall, 4 Divisions Peak. Spirit Sword Hall. Under the control of Wang Wu and her disciple, a duel between cultivators that the public loved to see finally appeared in front of everyone. Being insulted by Wang Wu and her disciple in a way that crossed the bottom line, no matter how cautious Taoist Master Jifeng was, he had no choice but to make his move. There wasn't a single nascent soul cultivator who was truly a coward. The path of cultivation was filled with thorns, and without great willpower, it was impossible to reach this realm. Even though Taoist Master Jifeng's 400 years of long life had caused him to lose his sharpness, when needed, he could still wield his sword to slay the devil. Wang Wu, don't blame me for bringing about your own destruction, Taoist Master Jifeng said and spat out a small sword from his mouth into his hand. That small sword rotated in a circle and turned into a 3 feet long sword. Although it looked a bit cumbersome in Taoist Master Jifeng's hand, the sword's body was simple and heavy, but it exuded a heart-palpitating aura. Wang Wu's eyes lit up. Spiritual treasure, this is a spiritual treasure. 6th junior brother, quickly help me appraise it. 6th Patriarch Lu Li, who was sitting on the side and watching, understood what 5th sister was thinking. He shook his head with a bitter smile and said, the sword of Mount Kuan, an 8th-rank spirit artifact, can be valued at 800,000 spirit stones in the mysterious sky mansion of the Blue River Plains. In the Central Plains the price is slightly lower, about 600,000. Hearing this number, Wang Wu almost danced with joy. Good. 6th junior brother, I'll treat you to a meal when we're done. Lu Li hurriedly waved his hand. Forget it. Senior sister, you pick the Misty Peaks cafeteria every time. I really can't afford it. A certain ethereal peak master coughed a few times awkwardly. This exotic cuisine is, after all, a favorite of foreigners. It's understandable for us locals to occasionally feel uncomfortable. Then a certain foreign race elder burst into laughter. Senior brother, you're too much. When I was a slave in the Western continent, the food I ate was... Ouch, who stepped on me? Inside the Spirit Sword Hall, several elders were merrily making a ruckus. Taoist Master Jifeng's complexion was like iron. Are you guys done? Feng Yin Taoist Master also felt that if they continued to make trouble like this, they would become unreasonable. Wantonly insulting an elder of Xingjing sect was indeed inexcusable. Very well, since Taoist Master Jifeng has agreed to junior sister's duel invitation, then without further ado let's begin. With that, this Taoist master with glasses stretched out his hand on the armrest of the chair. In an instant, the space in the Spirit Sword Hall disintegrated and was replaced by a high platform floating above the clouds. This was the highest-level martial arts arena of Lingjian School, the Cloud Platform. Taoist Master Jifeng looked around in bewilderment and found out that they were really transferred to another space. It wasn't because he was sucked into some cave abode or an illusion. It's not that Taoist Master Jifeng hadn't seen this kind of magical power before, but he had only seen it from the old monsters of the Unity stage. Even among the form synthesis cultivators, only the few with the highest cultivation could have such a divine ability. Was this guy really a deity transformation cultivator? Or could it be that a soul formation cultivator from Lingjian School was comparable to a body integration cultivator from other sects? It's not that exaggerated, right? For a time, Jifeng's heart was filled with panic. However, Feng Yin Taoist Master quickly dispelled his doubts. This is, after all, the Spirit Sword Mountain. With the help of the sect's power, it's twice the result with half the effort. Taoist Master Jifeng, you don't have to worry about it. So that's how it is. The Spirit Sword sect's sect leader naturally has all kinds of conveniences in the Spirit Sword Mountain. Just now he was just trying to scare himself. A few days ago in the White Moon Country when he fought against Wang Wu, the opposite party obviously didn't surpass the level of King Pill. On the contrary, her speed and destructive power were even inferior to the level of King Pill. Moreover, she was so poor that let alone a spiritual treasure, she didn't even have a magical treasure. That being the case, there was nothing to be afraid of. Thereupon, Taoist Master Jifeng's complexion turned solemn as he said with a sinking voice, Wang Wu, we don't need to talk about the reason for our dispute. Today, since you have invited me to a duel, I hereby promise that if I lose this duel, I will no longer argue with the things recorded on the sincerity paper, and all the sins will be taken by me. But if I win, Wang Wu indifferently nodded her head. If you want me to be your dual cultivation furnace, I'll do it, ha. The nearby Wang Lu was suddenly startled, thinking, damn master, take it easy. The last time you made a bet on this matter, you clearly lost. Taoist Master Jifeng coldly said, I don't need you to be my furnace, as long as you obediently admit your guilt and accompany me to the Xingjing sect to beg for forgiveness. Wang Wu was taken aback. Accompany you to the Xingjing sect? Do you want me to be your Xingjing sect's furnace and play with you at the bottom of the sea? This price is a bit too heavy. Who told you such a dirty topic? Taoist Master Jifeng's mind was in a mess. You're an elder of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, how could your mind be so dirty? Wang Wu angrily said, aren't you the one who made this request first? Let me tell you, I can be your furnace as long as you can win against me. But if I win, not only do I want you to obediently admit your debt, I also want your equipment and spirit stones. With that, she stared at the 8th rank spiritual treasure, the sword of Mount Kuan, and almost couldn't hold back her saliva. However, the expression on her face was still filled with righteous indignation. This kind of ability made his disciple feel ashamed of her inferiority. Taoist Master Jifeng didn't want to waste his breath. Very well, we'll do as you say. Then let's make our big heart demon oath. After a few breaths of time, the two of them made their respective vows. Using the immortal law and their own immortal cultivation foundation as collateral, they calmed their hearts and set an agreement for the duel. Not with the help of an outsider, not to kill. If it was written into a written contract, there would be countless room for discussion. However, with the big heart demon oath, these 2 simple conditions were enough. After the oath was made, Feng Yin Taoist Master once again changed the space, raising the cloud tread rooftop, making it look like a martial arts arena. However, when Taoist Master stepped onto the platform, he found out that the space suddenly changed. In front of him was a vast sea of clouds as far as the eye can see. As for the onlookers like Feng Yin, Lu Xian, and the other elders, they had already become an insignificant black dot in the sea of clouds. Is this another space magical ability? No, it's also an extremely brilliant Immortal's Cave technique. Taoist Master Jifeng inwardly exclaimed in admiration. This was indeed worthy of being one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. Although the scale was not large, this level of martial arts arena, even in the Xingjing sect, only the headquarters and a few super-large divisions could set it up. This kind of vast space could only be experienced by the duelists. From an outsider's point of view, it was nothing more than standing on a raised platform on the cloud tread rooftop. At the same time, the aftermath of the duel would also be absorbed by the martial arts arena, so that it would not hurt the bystanders. Moreover, in case of an emergency, the array would instantly be activated to stop the duel, so as to avoid unnecessary casualties. After using his primordial spirit to check the setting of the martial arts arena, Taoist Master Jifeng didn't detect any abnormality. His heart slightly calmed down. However, after a while he became impatient. He had been on the stage for so long, what was Wang Wu waiting for? After a long time, the other opponent of the duel, Wang Wu, appeared in front of Taoist Master Jifeng, standing on her emerald green bamboo sword. I'm sorry I'm late. Just now, someone opened a bet on the outcome of the duel, so I went around looking for someone to finance the bet, so it took me some time. Please don't mind, ha. Bet on the outcome of the duel? Taoist Master Jifeng simply couldn't believe it. What was going on with this Lingjian school? Couldn't they show a little bit of respect in a duel between cultivators of the King Pill level and above? Wang Wu sneered. To deal with a small fry like you, there's no need to be so serious. If it's your Hichu Daoren and our sect leader's duel, then it's more like it. But at that time I'll definitely open an underground casino, ha. Taoist Master Jifeng didn't want to listen to her nonsense anymore. He forcefully inserted the sword of Mount Kuan into the cloud platform under his feet. In a split second, the churning clouds under his feet fiercely shook, as if they were bound by an invisible force. Their movements became slower and slower, and their color changed from white to brown. Finally, the clouds solidified and unexpectedly formed a solid rock surface with a radius of several thousand meters. Not long after, mountain ranges began to rise and fall, one after another. The 8th rank spiritual treasure, the sword of Mount Kuan, was an extremely pure earth element sword, and Taoist Master Jifeng also possessed an extremely pure earth element earthly spirit root. On the cloud tread rooftop, he could only use 60 to 70% of his power. However, with this sword of Mount Kuan, this Yuanying stage Taoist master was able to turn the illusion into reality, creating a home ground advantage. At this time, How could the cloud-tread rooftop still have that ethereal and fairy-like atmosphere? What filled it was the surging spiritual energy of the earth element. Although this skill was understated, its essence was actually a Yuanying stage Taoist master's supreme magical method, using the technique of 4 liang moving 1,000 jin to change the surrounding spiritual energy. Although Taoist master Jifeng wasn't good at fighting, his spell casting was worthy of the title of Yuanying stage Taoist master, which immediately won a round of applause from the audience. Reward giver Elder Lu Xian didn't hesitate to praise him. He nodded and said, good cloud congealing earth. The Shengjing sect's immortal method really lives up to its name, worthy to be the #1 in the Wanxian League. Elder Fong he also gave a high evaluation. Although this person's character is unbearable, his attainment in spell casting is really good. Compared to the ordinary Yuanying stage cultivators that I've seen in the southern region, he's not just a notch better. Feng Yin Taoist master wore his glasses and pondered in silence. In his eyes, no one knew how the duel between the two had developed. At the same time, in the back row of the audience, a red and white cultivator held a stack of sincerity paper in his hand and loudly shouted, "Everyone look carefully. Taoist Master Jifeng has displayed his amazing method, proving that he is completely above the ordinary Yuanying stage cultivators." On the other side, it's still that unreliable, unprincipled, low cultivation, poor swordsmanship, the disgrace of the Spirit Sword sect, the fifth elder. The gap between the two is so big that it's needless to say. However, our odds remain the same. Taoist Master Jifeng's is still 1-5 and the fifth elder's is still 1-10. Everyone, if you want to bet, you better hurry. All kinds of things in the audience couldn't affect the duel between the two people on the stage. Taoist Master Jifeng took the initiative by using the sword of Mount Kuan to condense the earth from the void. On the other side, Wang Wu shrugged her shoulders as if it didn't matter. She then changed the posture of her emerald green bamboo sword and didn't cast any counterspell. Taoist Master Jifeng inwardly sneered, "This woman is actually smart. With her king pill cultivation level, she has no chance of winning against me in terms of spells. Her only hope lies in that sword of hers. I'm not good at fighting, so there's indeed a possibility that one sword can break 10,000 methods. Moreover, the flaw that I deliberately exposed, the other side seems to have taken it all in. Very well, as you wish, I'll go first." The next moment, Taoist Master Jifeng brandished the sword of Mount Kuan. Suddenly, the earth element spiritual energy between the heaven and the earth rolled up like a hurricane. The clear sky was suddenly covered with a layer of violent sand. Under the cover of the sandstorm, the sword of Mount Kuan moved again and slanted toward Wang Wu's shoulder. Boom! The earth trembled, and the rock ground within a radius of several kilometers seemed to have a life of its own. Along with the movement of the sword, the ground shook and roared. And under Wang Wu's feet, a thick stone pillar with a diameter of 100 meters rose from the ground, just like a sharp sword piercing the sky. Under the stage, Elder Lu Xian clapped his hands and praised, "What a good ground needle." The impact force of the stone pillar is secondary. The destructive power of the earthquake is also included in it, making it impossible to avoid and impossible to guard against. It's really rare and commendable for a Yuanying stage cultivator to have such a spell. Unfortunately, such a spell couldn't hurt Wang Wu even the slightest bit. Facing the fissure of the ground, the woman in white didn't show any change in her expression. She just lazily pointed her emerald green bamboo sword at her feet, blocking the ground needle that rose from the ground. The emerald green light flickered, and no matter how powerful the ground needle was, it was completely dissolved by the sword. After a breath, the ground stabilized and the ground needle took shape. Wang Wu gracefully stood on top of the needle. Her white dress was as white as snow, without a speck of dust. The Spirit Sword sect elders under the stage didn't say a word. They seemed to be accustomed to this. However, the disciples behind them were in an uproar. Just now, the Yuanying stage's ground needle seemed to be 100 meters high stone pillar rising from the ground, but it was actually the result of Taoist Master Jifeng's profound cultivation base compressing the range of his spell, which was enough to destroy a city and destroy a country, condensing the huge destructive power on top of the stone pillar. And the most critical point was the tip of the stone pillar. If it was pointed at the tip, the shock force contained in the ground needle was enough to disintegrate the body of a king pill cultivator and shatter the king pill. However, when it fell under Wang Wu's feet and was touched by the bamboo sword, it didn't have the slightest effect. Thus, people finally recalled a legend that had been passed down for a long time. It was said that this fifth elder was a master of defense. In the past, the disciples only thought that it was one of the 7 unimaginable legends of the Spirit Sword sect. But now it seemed like it was true. At the same time on the stage, Taoist Master Jifeng's complexion was solemn. His sword of Mount Kuan was still in his hand, and the sandstorm behind him was getting more and more violent, brewing a more powerful killing move. Wang Wu, somewhat bored, shook her bamboo sword. Old men really can't be strong. This empty stone pillar is not strong enough. Brother Jifeng, burn a bit of passion, I'll wait for you. Wang Wu somewhat boringly shook her bamboo sword. Old men really can't be strong, this empty stone pillar is completely not strong enough. Brother Jifeng, ignite a bit of passion and come out, I'll wait for you. Chapter 69. Taoist Master Jifeng, please be like a man, be strong, be masculine. Don't leave a bad impression in our young disciples' minds that Yuanying stage Taoist masters are XX. I'm looking forward to your passion. Moi, in front of hundreds of Lingjian school disciples, she sexually harassed a foreign elder. Countless disciples' faces turned red, and a certain disciplinary elder's face suddenly turned pale. Wang Wu, this female rogue's bottom line was once again refreshed. The opposite Taoist Master Jifeng was also enraged. He waved his sword of Mount Kuan, and the sandstorm completely blocked his field of vision. However, a moment later, a green light was ignited in the middle of the sandstorm. Although it seemed insignificant, like duckweed in the storm, it didn't fall. Instead, it became brighter and brighter. No matter what other people said, Wang Wu's defensive sword skill could be said to have reached the pinnacle. Under the spell of a Yuanying stage cultivator, she was able to easily deal with it. There were also some Spirit Sword sect disciples who had reached the King Pill stage, but they couldn't do it. The sandstorm roared, but it couldn't stop Wang Wu's laughter. Taoist Master Jifeng, is this your passion? I can't even use one hand to suppress you. Before her voice fell, Taoist Master Jifeng's figure suddenly disappeared in the sandstorm. At the same time, the sandstorm behind Wang Wu vaguely condensed into a human figure. A golden sword light came from the void, aiming straight at her back. Just when Wang Wu thought that she had succeeded, the opportunity that Taoist Master Jifeng had been waiting for finally arrived. The 5 elements support each other, earth gives birth to wood. You used your emerald green bamboo sword to borrow my earth element spiritual energy to double its power, and the King Pill blocked my Yuanying stage. Unfortunately, you're wrong about one thing. Although I have the earth element spirit root, and although I'm not good at fighting or swordsmanship, the sword of Mount Kuan in my hand can't only be used as a magical tool. More importantly, once the King Pill is full and the Yuanying stage is born, the 5 elements transformation will be under my control. Since I can condense the earth from the void, naturally I can also turning stone into gold. Take my golden hepta sword. With full killing intent and confidence, Taoist Master Jifeng finally made his move. Metal subdues wood, your wood King Pill will be defeated by me. On the Cloud Tread rooftop, under the protection of a deity stage Taoist Master, and also under the constraint of the Big Heart Devil Oath, Taoist Master Jifeng's sword had the intention to kill, but it didn't have the heart to kill. Although it was aimed at a vital point, it was not a fatal strike. This could be considered as a Yuanying stage Taoist Master's conscience. However, the next moment, the nascent soul perfected one's heart sank to the bottom. With a crisp sound of a block, the emerald green bamboo sword mysteriously appeared behind Wang Wu. The tip of the sword instantly blocked Taoist Master Jifeng's heptametal sword. The green light flickered, and sure enough, under the immortal Pat's law, the metal subdues wood, the sword finally turned into powder. However, Taoist Master Jifeng's determined strike also stopped. Not bad, you come and go like a ghost. Wang Wu's face revealed a trace of insincere surprise, and then she spread out her empty hands. And then? At this point, under normal circumstances, a nascent soul stage Taoist master would no longer continue the fight. After all, he was a stage higher than the opponent, and his sword was suspected to be a sneak attack, yet he still couldn't defeat the opponent. Even if he won, it would be a joke. However, at this time, how heavy was the burden on Taoist Master Jifeng's back? How could he admit defeat like this? He immediately pulled his face, braced himself, and sneered. And then? Now that you've lost your weapon, if you don't admit defeat, do you want me to hurt you? These words were half true and half false, because in Taoist Master Jifeng's view, the reason why Wang Wu was able to inexplicably block his heptametal sword was most likely because of the mystery hidden in that emerald green bamboo sword. The opponent seemed to be penniless, but as a peak King Pill master, it wasn't unusual for her to have 1 or 2 spiritual treasures or magical treasures. Thus, under the premise of sacrificing her weapon, it was understandable that she was able to block his heptametal sword. It wasn't because he was incompetent. However, Wang Wu laughed. Breaking my emerald green bamboo sword makes you this happy? How long has it been since you fought with someone, little Jifeng? With that, Wang Wu reached out her hand and took out a piece of emerald green bamboo from her mustard seed bag. Taoist Master Jifeng clearly saw that it was just an ordinary piece of bamboo, nothing special about it, and then used her magical power to drive it, causing it to gradually change into an emerald green sword. A good weapon that can be used in a fight is by no means a handicraft that blindly pursues performance. Instead, it must meet several basic conditions. Wide applicability, low cost, sturdy and durable, just like the emerald green bamboo sword in my hand. Come on, I have a weapon now, let's fight another 100 rounds, ha. Amidst her peerlessly arrogant laughter, countless people on and off the stage were dumbfounded. The successive rounds of attack and defense were an eye-opener for countless Spirit Sword sect disciples. Moreover, the Fifth Elder's impregnable defense, which could even withstand a Yuanying stage cultivator's attack, greatly changed people's view of her. Although she had no moral integrity and her character was rotten, but the title of Great Master of Defense was really not a bluff. Moreover, her point of view on what a good weapon was also refreshing. However, among the many disciples, there were also a few who didn't buy it. Nonsense, it's clear that a poor ghost can't afford to use a high-end equipment, yet she's still talking about low cost. At the same time, Taoist Master Jifeng's heart had completely sunk. What the hell, how could this be? Wang Wu's skill was not brilliant, it was just the most superficial refining method. Even a qi cultivating stage cultivator could use it, so of course she didn't need to be as unrestrained as her. However, regardless of whether she was unrestrained or not, the end result was almost the same. Let alone a spiritual treasure or a magical treasure, even a magical tool was difficult to be considered. Wang Wu's technique was quite brilliant, it could barely be considered as a low-rank magical tool. If she brought it to a place like the mysterious Sky Mansion, if she was lucky, she could exchange it for half a spirit stone. And that emerald green bamboo sword was obviously refined using the same technique. He had spent a lot of effort to break the opponent's weapon, but she only lost half a spirit stone. This was simply meaningless. However, in addition to these few moves, Taoist Master Jifeng was basically out of tricks. He was only good at studying spells, not good at fighting. In his 400 years of cultivation, the number of times he participated in a fight was no more than 50. Especially after he reached the stage of King Pill, he rarely fought with other people. He came from the Xingjing sect, so with his identity as the Taoist master of King Pill, it was enough for him to run amok. However, when the time came for him to show his fighting prowess, all the heroes in the Xingjing sect would come together, and Taoist Master Jifeng wouldn't need to come forward. He thought that with his 4th level Yuanying stage cultivation, the actual power of the 7th level spiritual treasure sword of Mount Kuan, as well as the several combat techniques that he occasionally pondered over, he would at least be able to take down the King Pill. However, he didn't expect that he had underestimated the world's cultivators. This 5th elder was obviously a cultivator who was extremely proficient in fighting. Whether it was her stable cultivation or her brilliant swordsmanship, she could be considered as a first-class cultivator in the same stage. Even in the Xingjing sect's headquarters, she could be considered as a master with this kind of skill. As a non-combat type Yuanying stage cultivator, it was reasonable for him to struggle. However, this was not a problem that could be solved by a reasonable sentence. Taoist Master Jifeng had no way out, not to mention that he was far from being at the end of his rope. A Taoist master of Yuanying stage, not to mention his endurance was several times stronger than the King Pill. When the Yuanying stage broke, it meant that his Jade Mansion was completed. His body's magical power was as if it had a life of its own. It could breathe in and out, circulate, and naturally multiply. Its efficiency was much higher than the spin of the King Pill. Therefore, Taoist Master Jifeng wasn't discouraged. After his killing move failed, he retracted the sword of Mount Kuan a bit, reducing the magical power output so that the sandstorm on the cloud platform became a bit thinner. Obviously, he wanted to prolong the fight. Of course, since the fight between the King Pill and the Yuanying stage had reached this point, the Yuanying stage Taoist master had long lost his face. However, as long as he could win, why would he care about his face? With a loud shout, Taoist Master Jifeng once again drove the sandstorm to wrap Wang Wu. However, no matter how powerful Taoist Master Jifeng was, he couldn't cover up Wang Wu's arrogant laughter. "You idiot, you actually dare to prolong the fight with me? Haven't you heard the old saying, there's no such thing as a broken field? only an exhausted cow? Ah. Several of the Lingjin school elders in the audience revealed a painful expression. A female disciple wearing a colorful dress, who was next to the fourth elder, innocently asked, Master, what does fifth martial uncle mean by a broken field and an exhausted cow? Zhou clenched his teeth. You don't need to know that much. What? Master clearly told me that if I don't understand I should ask. I absolutely can't act smart on my own. If you ask again, I'll punish you to copy the book 100 times. What? The female disciple's studious spirit was forcefully suppressed. However, the elders couldn't care less about this matter. The other disciples were also confused. They all had different opinions on the topic of the cow and the field. Although all of this was done stealthily in the Spirit Sword Mountain, how could it be hidden from the sect leader? Feng Yin pondered for a moment, and then asked the nearby elder Lu Xian, Junior brother, do you think we should start a physiology class in the Teng Cloud Hall? Oh, senior brother, you. When the people in the audience had completely led the topic to an unknown remote corner, the fight on the stage gradually entered the white-hot stage, and at the same time, it also came to an end. Taoist Master Jifeng didn't know how many times he had launched a violent surprise attack. At this time the Cloud Tread rooftop was no longer a congealed rock and soil, but a blazing sea of fire. This fourth-level Yuanying stage cultivator used the 5 elements transformation technique to perfection, constantly changing the operation of the surrounding spiritual energy, strengthening his own spell, and trying to suppress his opponents. During this period of time, Taoist Master Jifeng had used at least 50 kinds of high-rank spells, some of which even had the shadow of immortal technique. However, his opponent, the fifth elder of the Spirit Sword sect, although she was just a mere king pill cultivator, with her endless emerald green bamboo sword, she was able to block all of Taoist Master Jifeng's spells. Moreover, she did it with ease, she didn't even need to breathe heavily. After an hour, Taoist Master Jifeng felt that the 3-colored Yuanying in his jade mansion had gradually begun to pale, which was the sign of the disintegration of the magical power circulation. Although he had repeatedly suppressed his output in an attempt to prolong the fight, his opponent's emerald green bamboo sword had easily neutralized all of his killing moves. Thus, Taoist Master Jifeng couldn't help but speed up his output in an attempt to give her a taste of his strength. In the end, it was naturally a futile effort. Instead, he had destroyed the cycle and ruined the strategy of a protracted war. And then that's it? It doesn't seem to last long. The fifth elder carried her emerald green bamboo sword on her shoulder, somewhat bored. You're really useless, you're not even as good as ninth junior sister. Someone in the audience suddenly became unhappy. *T fifth senior sister, are you sick? Are you using me as a negative example? Even if my stage is indeed a bit immature, I'm still at the peak of 7-colored Yuanying, which is much stronger than this waste 3-colored Yuanying, right? I even spoke up for you before, but from now on the Carefree Peak cafeteria is closed to you. The fifth elder turned pale with fright. *T, don't be like this, we have a deep sisterly affection. As he spoke, the sky changed color, and more clouds appeared above the layer of clouds. Dark clouds covered the sun and lightning snaked about. Numerous purplish-green tribulation lightning bolts descended from the sky like vicious dragons that could swallow mountains and rivers. However, the fifth elder didn't even look at it. She smiled at the ninth elder in the audience while casually waving her emerald green bamboo sword to prop up a curtain of light, which blasted the tribulation thunder away. The aftermath splashed in all directions, and in an instant on the Spirit Sword Peak, the surrounding dozens of miles of clouds were swept away. Just the aftermath alone had such power. It was self-evident how much pressure the fifth elder, who was in the middle of the tribulation thunder, was under. However, the emerald green bamboo sword in her hand was still nimble, and Wang Wu's complexion didn't even change. Why? The purplish-blue sword of Mount Kuan in Taoist Master Jifeng's hand continued to tremble. Just now, the tribulation thunder had already begun to overdraft his true chi, but it still couldn't shake the opponent's defense. Even the several Yuanying stage Taoist masters in the sect couldn't do this. This 4th-level Yuanying stage Taoist master couldn't understand how a mere king pill could do this. How can you be so strong? Did you really rely on your own strength? Taoist Master Jifeng gritted his teeth and couldn't help but question. If she didn't cheat, how could she, a mere king pill, withstand the full power of a Yuanying stage Taoist master? As a result, Wang Wu just shrugged. It's not that I'm too strong, but you're too weak. Of course, compared to the average Yuanying stage Taoist master, you're not bad, at least your spells are dazzling. Unfortunately, you came to the wrong place. Do you see those Yuanying stage elders in the audience? Even the weakest among them, that particularly young and beautiful girl, is 10 times stronger than you. Although my cultivation level is the lowest among my peers, in the end I'm still one of them. You, a Yuanying stage Taoist master who used the Heaven Essence Kila technique, better save your breath. When Wang Wu mentioned the Heaven Essence Burning Blood technique, Taoist master Jifeng immediately angrily said, "This has nothing to do with the Heaven Essence Burning Blood technique. I'm just not good at fighting, so it's hard for me to use my cultivation level. Otherwise, how could a mere king pill like you have the leeway to be so arrogant?" Wang Wu sneered. "Not good at fighting? The reason you're using is pretty high sounding. In the White Moon country, when you bullied me because my cultivation level was only king pill, why didn't you mention that you're not good at fighting? If you can beat me, then you're invincible. If you can't, then you're not good at fighting. Do you have any face? In fact, for a cultivator like you who used the Kila technique to fatten up, even if you want to become good at fighting, you have no chance. The reason I destroyed your headquarters in the White Moon country was to prevent this kind of nonsense technique from being spread to the world, which would harm those seedlings of immortal cultivation who originally had a bright future." A bunch of nonsense. What do you, a rude and tasteless woman, know? When I'm done with my research, the Heaven Essence Burning Blood technique will lead the revolution of the entire immortal cultivation world. It will be no less than Patriarch Lu He's creation of artificial spirit root. Any cultivator who is limited by insufficient aptitude may be able to break through and achieve a higher stage. The 9 regions may even return to the glory of the Dreamtime. Unfortunately, all of this will be destroyed in your hands. You'll become the sinner of the entire immortal cultivation world. Wang Wu sneered. "Don't accuse me. I've already become the sinner of history more than once, so why would I care? You, on the other hand, are quite outrageous with your fantasies. You want to lead a revolution. With this opportunistic life-shortening technique?" Taoist Master Jifeng loudly said, "What else can I do? Aptitude is insufficient, perception is insufficient, opportunity is insufficient, and resources are insufficient. Once you reach the end of the immortal cultivation path without any extraordinary method, how can you continue to move forward? In this world, except for a few gifted children of heaven, who hasn't encountered bottlenecks on the immortal cultivation path? Who hasn't repeatedly tried to break through but failed? So instead of wasting your time in front of the fool's barrier, why not turn your useless lifespan into power, break through to a new stage in one fell swoop, and see that infinitely wonderful scenery?" Wang Wu put away her emerald green bamboo sword and clapped her hands. "Well said. But I want to ask, if your aptitude is insufficient, perception is insufficient, opportunity is insufficient, and resources are also insufficient. Without any conditions, how can you still cultivate to become an immortal? Just be an obedient mortal. Do you really think that everyone on the immortal cultivation path is equal? Dream on. If you don't have the ability, don't expect that treatment. This is the unchanging truth of the immortal cultivation path for thousands of years. If you want to wholeheartedly enjoy the scenery, that's fine, but you must be aware that when you walk on the immortal cultivation path with the mentality of a spectator, using extraordinary methods to bypass the barrier of tempering, no matter what appears on this road, it's just a scenery that can only be watched from afar. To put it bluntly, it has nothing to do with you. Ridiculous, you've cultivated to the 4th level of Yuanying stage, yet you don't know that you've even lost your basic Tao heart. Fighting with me in front of me is like running naked to make a fool of yourself. Extremely ridiculous. A dignified 4th level Yuanying stage cultivator with exquisite spells from the Xingjing sect can't even shake my 1-foot sword defense. Have you ever thought about how weak your Yuanying is? With this kind of brain, you still want to lead the revolution? You're leading people straight to the cesspool, haha. Simply a lunatic's ravings. The 5th Elder's hearty rebuke caused Taoist Master Jifeng's brain to buzz. His vision blurred, his chest was stinging with unbearable pain, and a sweet fishy taste immediately gushed up to his throat. His mind was injured, his jade mansion was shaken, and all methods were wasted. It was hard to imagine that a Taoist master of Yuanying stage would end up like this just because of a verbal argument. However, Taoist Master Jifeng's hand covered his chest, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't suppress the rampaging magical power in his body. His Tao heart was shaken and everything was over. Wang Wu's words directly broke through Taoist Master Jifeng's century-old stubbornness and arrogance, and mercilessly ripped off the mask that he used to deceive himself. That's right, what heaven-burning blood technique. To put it bluntly, it was just a slightly brilliant opportunistic method. He thought that with this method he could overcome all barriers of aptitude and perception. However, he didn't know that this rebellious attitude against the immortal path had doomed him to be abandoned by the immortal path. Was there really a cultivator with the king pill who could easily defeat a Yuanying stage cultivator? Perhaps there was, for example, in the Xingjing sect in the Azura Palace. However, this was not the reason why he lost to Wang Wu. To put it bluntly, it was not because the opponent was too strong but because he was too weak. It was not because his cultivation was weak, nor his spell was weak, but because his Dao heart was weak. The concept of Dao heart, for many low-level cultivators, was mysterious. Losing because of a weak Dao heart was even more difficult to understand. Just now, when Taoist Master Jifeng and Wang Wu fought, with just a thought, he condensed the earth from the void, turned the stone into gold, used several spells and controlled the surrounding spiritual energy. He was absolutely worthy of the title of Xingjing sect's Yuanying stage cultivator. He also won the unanimous praise of the elders of the Lingjian school, so how could he be weak? The answer was very simple. The Dao heart was mysterious but it had endless wonderful uses. And the most important point was, when two cultivators fought, the strength of the Dao heart would directly affect the outcome. Your Samadhi True Fire has 5,000 attack power while my Diamond Stars only has 3,000. It seemed like I would lose without a doubt, but if my Dao heart is twice as strong as yours, the winner would be me. This was a completely different concept from hitting a wooden dummy. The elders of the Lingjian school only praised Taoist Master Jifeng's attainment in spells. From the beginning they didn't think that Taoist Master Jifeng had a chance to win, because the disparity in their Dao heart was too big. Taoist Master Jifeng's supreme Dao heart was not weak, but his opponent, even if she only had the cultivation of the king pill, even if she created her own method to cultivate her Dao heart, after all. Non-phase immortal heart. Chapter 70. On the Cloud Tread rooftop, the violent transformation of the five elements finally came to an end. The mountain rocks in the void, the rolling fire clouds, and the howling sandstorm, all of the phenomena brought by Taoist Master Jifeng had disappeared. The Spirit Sword Peak was still filled with the warm sunshine and a thin layer of light clouds. I admit defeat. After a long silence, Taoist Master Jifeng lightly said. At this time, his face was as pale as paper, and the blood from the corner of his mouth dripped onto his lapel. In this duel, no matter how unwilling he was, in the end he had already lost. There was no point in forcing himself to continue, instead he would lose the face of the Xingjing sect. Relying on his last bit of rationality, Taoist Master Jifeng finally didn't make the insane suicidal choice. Since I've lost, everything is based on the bet. In the future, if there's an opportunity, I will definitely pay you a visit to ask for forgiveness. Taoist Master Jifeng bitterly smiled as he deeply bowed to the elders of the Lingjian school. The so-called if there's an opportunity, in fact there was no opportunity. His conspiracy in the White Moon country was exposed, and he suffered a crushing defeat in the Lingjian school. According to the sect's rules, being able to keep his life was already good enough. Being suppressed in the temple for 100 years was the minimum punishment, but after 100 years his lifespan would have already run out. A Yuanying stage Taoist master's lifespan was usually around 600 years. Taoist Master Jifeng was already more than 400 years old, so it stood to reason that he still had nearly 200 years of lifespan left. However, in the fight with Wang Wu, his heart was shaken and his jade mansion trembled. Although his cultivation didn't regress, he suffered countless internal injuries, which could almost be said to be hopeless to recover. Whether as an elder of the Xingjing sect or as a Yuanying stage cultivator, he had no future to speak of. That being the case, what was the point of stubbornly holding on to his tongue? Not to mention, even in terms of debating ability, he couldn't be compared to that woman in white. Since Taoist Master Jifeng readily admitted defeat, no more twists and turns, the Lingjian school also reciprocated by not hitting him when he was down. The most prestigious elders of the sect silently waved their hands to disperse the crowd of onlookers, leaving Taoist Master Jifeng with the last bit of face. After that, Feng Yin Taoist Master sighed and silently left the cloud platform. The second elder, Lu Xian, and the third elder, Fang He, wordlessly arrived at Taoist Master Jifeng's side. They set up their swords and prepared to personally send him out of the mountain gate, which was a little bit of respect for this Yuanying stage elder. The Lingjian school's behavior could be considered kind. However, Taoist Master Jifeng couldn't help but wryly smile in his heart. This is the so-called victor's etiquette. First, he beat the other half to death and then politely handed out a handkerchief. Wipe your nosebleed, dear. In the past decades, it was always him who handed out the handkerchief on behalf of the Shengjing sect. When had he ever been pitted by the other party as a loser? Your honorable sect really hid it well? When he was about to leave the mountain gate, Taoist Master Jifeng could no longer hold back and sighed with emotion. The top 5 of the Wanxian League really deserved their reputation. Even after his investigation, the most worthless 5th elder of the sect, a mere king pill cultivator, had such skill. How powerful would the other Yuanying stage elders be? Was really frightening. Upon hearing this, the 2 Spirit Sword sect elders beside him just faintly smiled. Lu Xian said, "Fellow Taoist Jifeng, you're overthinking it. 5th junior sister is a famous master of defense. Even if junior brother Fang He and I were to fight her, it would not be easy for us to break her 3 feet sword defense." Hearing this, Fang He suddenly frowned. Although he didn't speak, he said to his junior brother through his primordial spirit, "Senior brother, it's just a 3 feet sword defense, is it really that difficult to break it?" Lu Xian asked back, "Indeed, it's not difficult for us to break her 3 feet sword defense, but junior sister still has a 1 foot sword defense and even an inch sword defense. Just thinking about it gives me a headache. Junior brother, do you have the confidence to break her full defense?" Fang He thought for a moment. Several times he wanted to open his mouth, but in the end he swallowed it back. Indeed, 5th junior sister's impregnable defense was really hateful. Today on the Cloud Tread rooftop it was just a small test. Over the years, only the Heavenly Sword Hall elders who had suffered from it had a deep understanding of it. However, there was no need for outsiders to know about these things. In any case, it was just a kind of humanitarianism to comfort them. Upon hearing this, Taoist Master Jifeng sighed with emotion. This Lingjian school had been underestimated too much over the years. Perhaps in terms of comprehensive strength, there was still a big gap between this withered sect and Shengjing sect, Kunlun sect, and other sections. However, none of the 10 great elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall could be underestimated. Moreover, over the years many people had overlooked a very important factor. Although the elders of the Lingjian school seemed to be in their twilight years, in fact they were not that old. Among them, the oldest great elder, the sect leader of the Spirit Sword sect, Feng Yin Taoist Master, had just celebrated his 300th birthday a few years ago. The youngest, Hua Yun, seemed to be only 156 years old. Based on their cultivation level, although they couldn't be regarded as the top geniuses in the immortal cultivation world, considering the fact that they were on the same stage, their strength was overwhelming, which was really terrifying. Even if the Shengjing sect was the number 1 sect in the immortal cultivation world, how many of them could be compared to the 10 elders of the Spirit Sword sect? Perhaps only the dozens of madmen in the Greater One Hall could do it. He hated himself for being blinded by greed, rashly kicking this iron plate, and finally losing his reputation. Now, in addition to the bottomless abyss in front of him, Taoist Master Jifeng had no other way to go. At this time, the 3 of them had already reached the edge of the mountain gate. Just a few more steps and they would be out of the boundary of the Lingjian school. And once they were out of the boundary of the Lingjian school, in theory they would be in the Shengjing sect's territory. The 2 elders who were supposed to send the guest off stopped here. After sending him to his seat, they turned around and left. Taoist Master Jifeng sighed, and with a trace of determination he was about to take a step when suddenly, someone shouted from behind him. "Student Jifeng, please wait a minute." This voice was very familiar to him. It was the voice of the Spirit Sword sect's 5th elder who sent him into the abyss. Logically speaking, he should hate her to the bone. However, upon hearing her voice, his heart couldn't help but waver. She wants me to stop at this time. Could it be that there's a turn for the better, that I can still be saved? For example, she feels that it's too cruel to let me die, so it's better for us to discuss a harmonious solution and so on. As a result, Wang Wu's next sentence made him vomit blood. "Don't take away our sword of Mount Kuan and other equipment and spirit stones." When did the sword of Mount Kuan become yours? No, when they made the oath before the duel, it seemed like there was indeed such a thing. Just as Wang Wu said, in the duel the winner takes all and the loser kneels and licks. She really didn't forget to take all of them. Taoist Master Jifeng was silent for a moment. His primordial spirit penetrated his jade mansion and looked at the sword of Mount Kuan that was being nurtured inside. His heart couldn't bear it. This sword's grade was not particularly high, but it was, after all, a genuine spiritual treasure. When he first entered the Yuanying stage, the sect leader personally gave it to him, and later, it accompanied him for 100 years. Spiritual treasures have their own spirit, and the sword of Mount Kuan was no exception. The sword's spirit, Autumn Beam, was gentle, refined, and loyal. Taoist Master Jifeng regarded her as his own daughter, so how could he be willing to give it to others? However, thinking of the 100 years of imprisonment in the temple, he couldn't help but shudder. In this life he had no hope, so why should he implicate that child Autumn Beam to suffer with him? Taoist Master Jifeng no longer said anything. Enduring the stabbing pain in his heart, he used the power of his Yuanying stage to make the sword spirit Autumn Beam sleep, and then threw the sword of Mount Kuan and the mustard seed bag containing all of his belongings to Wang Wu. Good, treat her well. The woman in white smiled and received the sword of Mount Kuan, and then enthusiastically waved at him. Take care, classmate Jifeng, I won't send you off. Humph. Jifeng's heart was filled with anger. He turned around and flew away. The woman in white looked up at the sky and regretfully said, "This guy is really tough." Behind her, her beloved disciple Wang Lu slowly walked over and asked with a smile, "Where did his toughness come from? Did you make his blood vessels so hard?" The fifth elder said, "I just tried to save his life, but unfortunately he didn't appreciate it." *CK? We were just watching the whole time, but aside from extorting and showing off, when did you save people? The fifth elder was distressed by her disciple's lack of understanding. You really don't understand me. I'm the kind of person who hits someone when they're down, and I take pleasure in slapping their face. Just now, I clearly hinted to him that there was a way for him to survive. After thinking about it, Wang Lu really couldn't understand. I'd like to hear the details. You see, this time his matter in the White Moon country has been exposed. If he goes back to the mountain, he'll die, right? Therefore, if it were me, I would simply not go back to the mountain, and instead seek political asylum from other sects. *CK? Political asylum? The fifth elder excitedly explained, you see, although his heart is unstable and his actual combat ability is terrible, he is, after all, a Yuanying stage Taoist master. As one of the Xingjing sect's elders, he can be regarded as a middle-level manager. Moreover, he's also the person in charge of a certain local branch. This kind of person must have a lot of blackmail materials in his hands. For example, the Xingjing sect used its so-called continent-wide strategy to establish branches in various places to carry out intelligence work, monitor the actions of other sects, and even use undercover and other means to interfere with other sects' internal affairs and other secret plans. *CK. Master, where did you get this idea from? Moreover, if he really dares to expose his own sect's information, that's a naked act of courting death. The fifth elder had a lonely expression on his face. How can a little brat like you know about the world's general situation? Right now in the 9 regions, the Xingjing sect is the most powerful sect, and there are countless sects that want to bring them down. Even the rumored Kunlun sect, which is in the same boat as the Xingjing sect, only came together because of common interests. Secretly, their intrigue are hard to describe. Not to mention there's also the Royal Soldier sect, the long-standing opponent of the Xingjing sect. In this case, as long as he, Jifeng, dares to send himself to the cusp of the wind and waves, there will certainly be people who will come forward to protect him. If I'm the sect leader, I will generously let him stay. If your Xingjing sect wants him back, you can, but you have to give me 5 million spirit stones. Wait a minute, 5 million spirit stones? What if the Xingjing sect really takes it out? If they take it out, it means they have a guilty conscience. If they don't give me 10 million spirit stones, don't even think about sealing my mouth. Seeing that the topic has gone off the rails, Wang Lu glanced at his master, who was still immersed in the pleasure of pointing out the country, and could not help but sigh. You, this brain-dead elder, are indeed worthy to be the #1 swindler in the Spirit Sword sect. Chapter 71. Taoist Master Jifeng absent-mindedly flew eastward from the Spirit Sword Mountain. Because he had lost his sword of Mount Kuan and his Tao heart was shaken, his flying speed was not fast. After nearly an hour, he still hadn't left the area of influence of the Spirit Sword Mountain. Then Taoist Master Jifeng saw a black-clothed Taoist blocking his way. Recovering from his trance, Taoist Master Jifeng stared at him and couldn't help but be startled. Then his heart turned cold. Kong Zhang? Taoist Kong Zhang, like him, was a cultivator of the Xingjing sect. Both of them cultivated in the Blue River Region Division. However, his identity was highly independent, and he was not under Taoist Master Jifeng's jurisdiction. Although his cultivation level was no higher than the King Pill, he had never given Taoist Master Jifeng any face. Because this Taoist Kong Zhang was a subordinate of the hall leader of the Xingjing sect. He was responsible for intelligence work independently, and was directly responsible to the hall leader and the sect leader. He was somewhat similar to the great Ming country's genie guards. Taoist Kong Zhang's intelligence work was both external and internal. However, in the past he was low-key. Taoist Master Jifeng had repeatedly probed him, but he remained unmoved. Thus, Taoist Master Jifeng gradually let down his vigilance. He thought that this person was just a good-for-nothing who, like him, was sent to the Blue River region because of his lack of ability. Therefore, Taoist Master Jifeng's little trick in the White Moon country was concealed from him, but now it seemed lost. Taoist Kong Zhang's cold words squeezed out from his cyan face, making Taoist Master Jifeng's chest turn cold. Things had indeed been exposed. This fellow disciple, who was more like a ghost than a human, had probably known everything from the very beginning. He had just deliberately allowed him to act, probably to bait him? Yes, I lost. Kong Zhang coldly said, disgraceful waste. You. Taoist Master Jifeng's anger was ignited. Even though he was indeed a stray dog, he was still a Yuanying stage elder. A little king pill cultivator like you shouldn't flaunt your strength here. Who do you think you are? The fifth elder of the Lingjian school? The Yuanying stage cultivator's heart was filled with anger. His magical power spontaneously revolved, trying to mobilize the surrounding spiritual energy to cast a spell to teach Kong Zhang a lesson. However, before Taoist Master Jifeng could make his move, a lightning bolt suddenly appeared in front of him. The next moment, Taoist Master Jifeng completely froze. The magical power that he had just circulated was forced to stop, because even if he had thousands of spells in his mind at this time, he was no match for the dagger that was placed across his neck. Taoist Kong Zhang, with a golden dagger in his hand, crossed the distance of a kilometer in a flash, broke Taoist Master Jifeng's protective spell, and placed the dagger on his vital point. Then he sneered in front of Taoist Master Jifeng. Trash indeed. You can't even take a single move from me. Taoist Master Jifeng only felt a surge of coldness. Just a moment ago, the power of thunder poured into his body and launched a surprise attack from inside and outside. Not to mention that he was caught unprepared. Even if he was fully prepared, whether or not he could block it was still unknown. With this in mind, Jifeng trembled as he asked, "Are you really just a cultivator with the king pill?" Kong Zhang sneered. "To deal with a waste like you, why would I need a higher stage?" With that, he stretched out his hand and pointed at the center of Jifeng's forehead. A strange magical power was stimulated and formed a seal in the air. No matter how much of a waste Taoist Master Jifeng was, his knowledge was extensive. He quickly recognized the meaning of the seal. This is Kong Zhang without the trial of the sect. You can't do this to me? What a joke. A waste like you doesn't need the trial of the sect's elders. The evidence of your crime has already entered the mountain, so you have no choice but to admit it. Kong Zhang stretched out his right hand and forcibly slapped the seal into the center of his forehead. Taoist Master Jifeng screamed as he was suddenly wrapped in a powerful magical power and gnawed away. His whole body was twisted and groaning. Taoist Master Jifeng's body, which had been painstakingly cultivated for 400 years, was unexpectedly defenseless in front of this seal. In just a cup of tea's time, Taoist Master Jifeng's appearance had completely changed. The original old man was replaced by a green donkey. Kong Zhang led the green donkey and treaded on the cloud. Before long, they arrived at an unremarkable town in the Blue River region. The town wasn't big, but it was located on the main road. It was bustling with people coming and going. Kong Zhang landed a few miles away from the town. When he landed, his blue robe, which contained countless magical power, had turned into a common coarse gown. Kong Zhang himself, from a cold-faced Taoist master, had turned into a middle-aged peddler. Leading the green donkey, he slowly walked into the town. After entering the town, Kong Zhang went straight to an inn, tied the green donkey outside the door, and asked the waiter for a guest room. After eating a few dishes on the first floor, he went upstairs to rest. However, when he pushed open the door and stepped inside, that simple and crude guest room suddenly changed into a stretch of green water and green mountains. It was like a completely different world. Not long after Kong Zhang entered the guest room, several Xingjing sect cultivators in black clothes flew over and respectfully saluted him. Kong Zhang nodded to one of them and then said, "Give me the information on the Lingjian school in recent years." That cultivator in black clothes complied and returned half an hour later, holding 5 jade slips in his hand. Kong Zhang could not help but frown. Only these? In recent years, the intelligence focus of the Blue River region was not on the Lingjian school. This one of the 5 uniques had been low-key for too long, which made people almost uninterested in it. Instead, some of the second-rate sects in the Blue River region had risen up, stirring up trouble and attracting people's attention. It was just that Kang Zhang didn't expect that with the intelligence network of the Xingjing sect, the information on the Lingjian school would be so lacking. However, when he took a piece of jade slip and used his primordial spirit to look at it, cold sweat suddenly poured out like a spring, and his mind was greatly shaken. What's going on with this sect? Putting down the jade slip, this cold-faced cultivator couldn't help but scold. Jifeng, that waste, he almost provoked a disaster. Xingjing sect never feared enemies, but they also absolutely would not casually make enemies. Especially now that they have a continent-wide strategy, setting up branches in various places was to make friends, not to make enemies everywhere. If they really provoked the whole world, no matter how powerful Xingjing sect was, it would still be a dead end. In particular, although the Xingjing sect was the strongest in the Wanxian League, it was not invincible in the Wanxian League. Some enemies, if possible, should not be provoked. After reading the jade slip, Kang Zhang immediately concluded that this Lingjian school was absolutely one of the targets that should not be easily provoked. Of course, it was not to say that the Xingjing sect really couldn't be provoked, but the loss was not worth the gain. Thinking to this, Kang Zhang sighed, picked up the pen and then quickly wrote in the air. One day later, a golden flying sword flew from the east and fell into the boundary of the Lingjian school. That flying sword's momentum was extremely fast, but it suddenly stopped in front of the Spirit Sword Mountain's gate and quietly floated in the air, like a visiting guest from afar. Before long, the gate of the Lingjian school opened up a corner, and that flying sword slowly flew along the open path and finally fell into the palm of an old man. The old man was naturally the sect leader of Spirit Sword Mountain, Feng Yin, who was in charge of all living things. He put the golden flying sword into the gate because he had already recognized it as the Xingjing sect's messenger flying sword. Speaking of which, in today's increasingly frequent exchanges between the major sects, messenger flying sword was rarely seen. It was only used in relatively formal occasions, and usually, it was just a few communication talismans, which was fast and labor-saving. With a bit of suspicion, Feng Yin took the golden flying sword and found that there was a mustard seed bag tied to the sword robe. Inwardly, he immediately understood. It turned out to be an express delivery. No wonder they didn't use talismans. However, what did the dignified Xingjing sect want to send? Why did they have to be so secretive? Usually, this flying sword was used between individuals to send messages. The two sects, especially the big sects of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, usually had to be careful in their every move. The Lingjian school had always been low-key, but the Xingjing sect was known as the world's #1 sect, so their face has always been particularly meticulous. If there was something that they wanted to send, they would certainly send a cultivator to personally deliver it with great fanfare. They would never simply send out a golden flying sword. No matter how you looked at it, it would be disrespectful. Last time, when Taoist Master Jifeng angrily single-handedly attacked them, Feng Yin Taoist Master actually saw through his guilty conscience. With the Xingjing sect's unique pretentious attitude, how could they let a mere branch leader like him rashly attack them? Even if the Xingjing sect looked down on him, they still had to do a good job with their face, right? Then this time, Feng Yin smiled. He guessed that it was most likely related to Taoist Master Jifeng's matter. The Xingjing sect also knew that this was a scandal, so they didn't dare to publicize it. And this mustard seed bag, was it their money to cover up their secret? Well, he could actually look forward to it. Although the Lingjian school wasn't poor, and with the size of the school, it could be said that it was abundant in resources, but compared to the rich and overbearing Xingjing sect. According to Feng Yin's knowledge, the Xingjing sect's annual foreign affairs expenditure was tens of millions of spirit stones. Therefore, this time Taoist Master Jifeng had stirred up such a big trouble, so how could he not give up 1 or 2 million spirit stones to cover up his secret? With a trace of expectation, Feng Yin Taoist Master cast a spell to unlock the mustard seed bag, and sure enough, there was a sparkling and translucent crystal inside, a first-rate mysterious sky crystal. The so-called mysterious sky crystal was a high-level currency issued by the mysterious sky mansion. Usually, the value of a mysterious sky crystal was equivalent to tens of thousands of spirit stones. And the one in Feng Yin's hand was a first-rate mysterious sky crystal that was worth millions of spirit stones. The mysterious sky crystal itself was not particularly precious, but the mysterious sky mansion's strong strength and good reputation supported its price. This large monetary institution was independent of any sect in the Wanxian League, and it was jointly funded by the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League as well as more than 10 other first-rate sections. Its reputation was almost equal to the golden signboard of the Wanxian League, so naturally, its reliability was needless to say. At the same time, the mysterious sky crystal also contained the mysterious sky mansion's unique secret method, which made it extremely difficult to crack the imitation. More importantly, even if the imitation could be cracked for a while, it was absolutely impossible to not be detected by others. Therefore, Feng Yin Taoist master didn't worry about the authenticity of the mysterious sky crystal. The dignified Xingjing sect, even if they secretly sent a flying sword as a delivery, they wouldn't send a fake one which would make them a laughing stock. Millions of spirit stones. As a cover-up fee, the Xingjing sect's offer was quite generous. However, just as he was thinking about it, Feng Yin found that there were still several odds and ends in the mustard seed bag. After he poured them out, he was immediately taken aback. Is this donkey meat roast? Looking at the still steaming hot roast meat on the table, Feng Yin Taoist master deeply wrinkled his brows. He couldn't figure out the significance of this move by the Xingjing sect. Therefore he put the glasses on the bridge of his nose. The world behind the Kunlun mirror suddenly became different. The line of cause and effect that ran through all things in the world was no longer mysterious in that pair of deep eyes. Feng Yin Taoist master was surprised for a moment, and then his complexion gradually turned dignified. Second junior brother, come here. Feng Yin casually said this sentence. A moment later, a sword light flew over from the misty peak carrying Lu Xian. Senior brother, what's the matter? Feng Yin shook his head and threw a donkey meat roast meat to Lu Xian. Lu Xian, baffled, took it and was about to eat it. Junior brother, don't eat it. Feng Yin anxiously thought, how could that donkey meat roast be eaten? Can't you see the trick? Lu Xian was startled, and then he carefully observed the roast meat in his hand. The meat is fine, the fat and lean are evenly distributed, and there's a faint immortal spirit qi in it. Could it be an immortal donkey? Senior brother, where did you find such a strange thing? Feng Yin snorted and pointed at the flying sword from the Xingjing sect as well as the mysterious sky crystal on the table. Do you understand? Lu Xian's mind turned, and then he roughly understood the cause and effect. Naturally, he couldn't hold the donkey meat roast in his hand anymore, so he threw it back to his senior brother. This Xingjing sect is really ruthless. Feng Yin said, cruel and merciless? It's much better than being locked in the temple's prison for 100 years. Based on this, after 10 years he would return to his original form. It's just that, these 10 years would be more difficult to bear. But this has nothing to do with us. Xingjing sect sent us this thing because they want us to settle this in private without making it public. Later on they would send someone to officially visit them. At that time, as long as we put on a show, the two sects would jointly issue a statement, and then the matter would be over. And I think there's really no need to offend Xingjing sect for this kind of trivial matter. Junior brother, what do you think? Lu Xian frowned. It's indeed a trivial matter and there's no loss to us. I think senior brother, you can make the call on this matter, no one would object. Feng Yin said, if it's just to calm things down, I really only need to make the call on Xingjing sect to reach an agreement. But junior brother, I think this matter can't just end like this. Senior brother, what do you mean? The White Moon country is in the Blue River region, and it's not far from our Lingjian school. Moreover, I remember hearing from the wandering disciples that in recent years, the immortal cultivation world in the Blue River region can be described as a foul atmosphere. There are countless cases of swindlers deceiving mortals. Lu Xian nodded. That's also true. The other regions have several sects to suppress the situation, but only the Blue River region has no leader. So, senior brother, do you want to expand the sect's power? Oh, blindly expanding is not good for the Lingjian school, but since we've suppressed the Feng Shui line node in the Blue River region under our sect, we have to shoulder an unshirkable responsibility for the Blue River region. The Xingjing sect's division is just an example, but similar things have happened again and again, so I think this can't be ignored. Lu Xian asked, so, senior brother, how do you plan to deal with this? Can't we just ask the Wanxian League to come forward for this kind of thing? It can be done, but the Lingjian school's 5 uniques title probably can't be kept anymore. In the past 100 years we've already been criticized. Although there's no need to care about the opinions of outsiders, the 5 uniques title is still useful in many situations. Therefore it's best for us to deal with this matter ourselves. In any case, the ones who created this kind of low-end scam are just some Tom, Dick, and Harry. Lu Xian snorted. But the number is huge. Just finding these snakes and rats in the vast Blue River region is already a headache. Unless, senior brother, You're willing to sacrifice 10 years of cultivation to deduce your stellar diffraction technique to the extreme and instantly lock all the targets. Feng Yin laughed. Why do we need to do it? Won't there be coolies coming to our doors soon? Shengjing sect? Isn't that right? They've been operating the continent-wide strategy for so many years, and they've already planted countless nails in the Blue River region. They should be more familiar with these things than us. That makes sense. Then what about after that? Senior brother, who are you going to send to clean up these maggots? In the end, the Lingjian school is still a bit withered. Is that so? I think there are already a lot of disciples in the sect. This time, we should take this opportunity to send the new disciples who have been in the sect for 10 years out to gain experiential learning. Always staying in the sect for experiential learning would, after all, lack a bit of realism, which is not good for their growth. They should come into contact with the ways of the world in 9 regions, so that their path of immortal cultivation can be smooth and stable. Lu Xian was taken aback. Let the new disciples deal with it? Senior brother, you're... After a pause, Chuan Gong elder solemnly asked, Senior brother, this is exactly the same as the management training from 100 years ago. Feng Yin laughed. Don't exaggerate it. We're not asking them to go deep into the savage land to expand their territory, but to deal with some small fries in the Blue River region. If they can't even do this, how could they survive in the immortal cultivation world? After all, they're just new disciples. Most of them haven't even reached the middle-level foundation establishment stage. According to the Lingjian school's training policy, if the disciples have reached the high-level foundation establishment stage or above, dealing with those snakes and rats wouldn't be considered as experiential learning. It's just a simple cleaning. Junior brother, you have to have more confidence in the disciples of Spirit Sword sect. Lu Xian wryly smiled a few times. Obviously he was still somewhat hesitant. However, since his senior brother had already made up his mind, there was no need to say more. Yes, senior brother. After that, I'll ask you to take the lead and let the Heavenly Policy Hall come up with an experiential learning plan for me. I want it to be completed by next month. Okay. Chapter 72. Spirit Sword Mountain Non-Phase Peak. In a simple bamboo room, the master and disciple sat opposite to each other. The disciple respectfully poured a cup of hot tea and gave it to his master. His master was flattered. She immediately used more than 10 spells to carefully check the tea. After confirming that there was no poison, she carefully took a sip. It was indeed the tea of non-phase peak. It was bitter and astringent, basically tea residue. His master nodded with satisfaction. His disciple was indeed worthy to be her disciple. The spirit of hard work and plain living was very good. Life should be like this, the more frugal it could be. So, little Wang Lu, looking at your constipated expression, what do you want to ask? Wang Lu of course had something to ask. When his master returned from her wandering trip, she brought back a series of surprises. The questions in Wang Lu's mind had already piled up like a mountain. For example, the chivalrous act that was completely incompatible with her temperament, the magical swordsmanship of the king pill that broke the Yuanying stage, or the magical heart of Tao. Too many questions came to his mind at the same time, which made him not know where to start. However, what kind of person was Wang Lu? After thinking for a while, he sorted out the questions, arranged them according to their importance, and then asked the most important question first. Master, what exactly is going on between you and 7th Martial Uncle? The tea in her mouth was completely sprayed on her lapel. The woman in white didn't care that her wet lapel would expose her spring scenery. She asked in inexplicable surprise, what nonsense are you talking about, you naughty brat? I and 7th Martial Uncle are innocent. Wang Lu nodded. Innocent as milk chocolate? Damn. You're already milk chocolate, how could you be innocent? Where did you learn such dirty thoughts at such a young age? Watch me brainwash you. The woman in white righteously reprimanded her disciple, and then stretched out her finger. An invisible sword chi pierced through the air and stabbed at Wang Lu's forehead. Of course, the sword chi didn't have any lethality. Not only was its strength only 1,000th of the king pill cultivators, it didn't have the sharpness that a sword chi should have. However, if one was stabbed by the sword chi, they would at least have a concussion for 2 or 3 days. However, the moment the sword chi touched his body, Wang Lu's body shook, and the 206 non-phase sword bones spontaneously trembled, completely dispersing the blunt force of the sword chi. Although the strong impact still brought him pain, it didn't matter. This change shocked even his master. Mastery of the 8th level of the sword bone? Kid, your progress is pretty good. It's only been a little more than a month and you've already completed the 8th level. Wait a minute, what are you doing? While speaking, Wang Wu suddenly flicked out another sword qi. This time the force was still not strong and the speed was also slow, but it contained a murderous intent. The moment the sharp sword qi shot out, it pierced Wang Lu's primordial spirit, causing a sharp pain in the center of his forehead. However, the physical pain didn't affect his reaction. Wang Lu suddenly raised his right hand and pointed his middle finger forward, just right on top of the sword qi. Bang! After a muffled sound, all the bones in Wang Lu's body trembled, and his internal organs seemed to have been displaced, which made him nauseous. However, in the end he was able to resolve the power of this sword qi. Not bad. Even a low-level foundation establishment cultivator would be seriously injured by that attack, but you were able to block it unscathed. It shows that you've already passed the first level of the sword bone mastery. This progress is really amazing. As the woman in white spoke, she frowned deeply. It's fine that you've mastered the first 8 levels. You have the aptitude of the void spirit root and are good at experience, so it's not surprising that your cultivation speed exceeded my expectations. But I don't remember teaching you the 9th level of the sword bone mastery. With your current accumulation, it's impossible for you to comprehend it on your own. Who taught you this? Wang Lu replied with difficulty, 7th martial uncle. The woman in white suddenly smiled sinisterly. Oh, 7th martial uncle? Is it that 7th martial uncle who has a big tool and is good at living? While I was away, the two of you got along quite well. Wang Lu forced a smile. Isn't that so? 7th martial uncle said that 5th martial sister's child is his child. Thanks to the adultery between the two of you, I was able to receive martial uncle's help and improve my cultivation greatly. Oh, you've become 7th martial uncle's child? Is this the posture of worshipping him as your godfather? The vulgar attacks of the master and disciple continued for a long time until a simple and honest black man who was cultivating spiritual plants in Blue Cloud Peak sneezed continuously. Finally, both of them felt bored and stopped talking at the same time. Say it, what do you want to ask? Wang Lu looked at the master in front of him who did not have the demeanor of an expert, and then thought of the peerless heroism that disintegrated the Taoist heart of a Yuanying master not long ago. He couldn't help but sigh. Master, you really hide your strength. His master snorted, took a sip of the crudely made tea and said, of course I can't casually show it to others. That's something that those infatuated girls of the Joyful clan would do. I'm a woman from a good family after all. No, I'm referring to the duel just now. Master, you've misunderstood. The woman in white once again took a sip of tea, trying to cover up her embarrassment. You mean that duel? In fact, it's not a big deal. He's just a waste Yuanying stage cultivator, so why make a fuss about it? Waste Yuanying stage cultivator? Casually? Wang Wu said it lightly, but in fact, if Yuanying stage cultivators were really so worthless, they wouldn't be called Yuanying stage old monsters and treated with deep reverence. In fact, more than 90% of the cross-stage challenges in the immortal cultivation world ended in failure or even a crushing defeat. A higher level of cultivation often meant an all-round suppression. How could it be easy to win? What's more, no matter how unbearable Taoist Master Jifeng was, after all, a Yuanying stage cultivator from a famous sect. His foundation was much stronger than those cultivators from third-rate sects or loose cultivators. Therefore, Wang Lu's master's calm victory was so inconceivable. Although he had heard people say that his master seemed to have the reputation of being the #1 king pill in the immortal cultivation world, but even if the rumor was true, it was nothing more than the #1 king pill. There should be a deep gap between the Yuanying stage and the Yuanying stage. Oh, little Wang Lu, you've been deceived by the false common sense of the immortal cultivation world. Don't think of the commonly used stage division in the immortal cultivation world as a pagoda-shaped structure, one layer on top of the other. In fact, after the king pill stage there's no difference in the level of a cultivator, only the direction is different. The Yuanying stage is not necessarily better than the king pill stage, and the deity stage is not necessarily better than the Yuanying stage. If the cultivator's pursuit of the immortal cultivation world is a distant goal, then whether it's the king pill or the Yuanying stage, they're just different roads leading to the same destination. Master's words were sincere, but Wang Lu felt that this theory was absurd. According to what you said, if there's no difference between the king pill stage and the deity stage, then why do cultivators have to painstakingly pursue a breakthrough in the realm? After advancing to the king pill stage they could just peacefully cultivate. What's the point of going through so much trouble to break through the realm? Or are you saying that for the past tens of thousands of years, cultivators have been doing useless work? So many amazing geniuses, but none of them have discovered that there's no need to break through the realm. Staying at the king pill stage will allow one to become a true immortal one day? Wang Wu explained, the path of immortal cultivation is full of thorns. When people discovered that following the king pill stage, the Yuanying stage, the deity stage, and the Mahayana stage, they could all become immortals. Who would be so bored to open up a heretical path? No matter how amazing a person is in front of a mortal's path to the immortal realm, they're still insignificant and lowly. So, after so many years, indeed, no one has discovered this truth. Ha, so many people haven't discovered it, only you have? Wang Wu nodded confidently. Yes, I even applied for a patent, but unfortunately it was rejected. Nonsense, it'd be strange if it wasn't rejected. In fact, my theory is indeed not perfect, but there's one thing I want you to remember. To measure a cultivator's strength, you don't see which path he's standing on, but how far he's walked on this path. And any realm, in fact, contains infinite possibilities. It just depends on whether you have the ability to explore it. Hearing this, Wang Lu had nothing to say. After all, he'd only been cultivating for a little more than 2 years. Whether it was theory or practical experience, he was far from being comparable to his master, let alone arguing with her. Not to mention her king pill battle record against a Yuanying stage cultivator was right there, which was more powerful than any theory. However, after listening to his master, Wang Lu was very curious. How far had she walked on the path of the king pill? Master, how much strength did you use to defeat Jifeng? His master thought for a moment. At least 1 in 10,000. Isn't this F***king nonsense? If you don't want to say it, then forget it. Wang Lu was too lazy to entangle himself in this useless topic with his master, so he went straight to the point. Master, teach me the non-phase sword art. The previous battle with Taoist Master Jifeng for the other disciples of Spirit Sword Sect was just a jaw-dropping drama. However, in the eyes of Wang Lu, who also cultivated the non-phase method, there were too many tricks. His master was able to use the king pill to break through the Yuanying stage, and the biggest contributor in that battle was the seemingly mediocre, but in fact the exquisite non-phase sword art. His master, with a bamboo sword, displayed the power of the king pill cultivator to the extreme. It was simply breathtaking. And according to his 7th martial uncle, after cultivating the 9th layer of the sword bone, the most important thing was, of course, to cultivate the non-phase heart sutra, which would speed up the accumulation of the surrounding spiritual energy and lay a solid foundation. However, on the other hand, he could also start to practice several fighting methods such as the non-phase sword art. However, for the newcomers of the low-level chi cultivating stage, the fighting method was not important, especially the pure defensive method of the non-phase method. According to the 5th elder's idea, the best thing to do was to be like the valley hero and focus on advancing to the high-level chi cultivating stage in 1 or 2 years, and then she could go to the sect leader to show off her painstaking efforts in teaching her disciple, and then swindle the bounty. In view of this, Wang Lu very directly put forward his application, lest his master taught him a force-feeding method, which would be bad for him. As a result, his master actually readily nodded and then, "Okay, which one do you want to learn?" Wang Lu was suddenly startled. "How many do you have?" "I don't dare to say too many, but I definitely have more than 20. Thinking of his master's 100% original and scrupulous and more than 100 versions of the non-phase heart method, Wang Lu could not help but feel powerless. "Can you help me get rid of a few wrong answers?" His master smiled. "That being the case, I'll recommend you 2 sets of non-phase sword art. However, the threshold for these 2 sets of non-phase sword art is very high. One requires the cultivator to have great perseverance, and the other requires great wisdom. I don't know if I choose the great wisdom." Wang Lu made a prompt decision, full of confidence. If he chose the great perseverance, he would have to cultivate for 100 years to reach the small success level, then he would have to cultivate for a fart. "Oh, you choose the great wisdom type, it's actually very suitable for your opportunistic style." After his master evaluated him maliciously, she said, "But this doesn't mean that perseverance can be abandoned. On the contrary, perhaps this road will be more difficult than great perseverance." "Because I haven't gone through it." Wang Lu suddenly spurted out his saliva. "You haven't practiced the sword art, yet you have the nerve to teach me?" His master confidently said, "Nonsense, who stipulates that the master must have practiced the kung fu when teaching the disciple? The Heavenly Sword Hall's male elders are now teaching the female successor disciples. Don't tell me that before teaching them how to chop a red dragon, they must first find a red dragon to practice? Wang Lu was suddenly speechless. Humph, young man, you still have no experience. It was rare for his disciple to choke to death, so his master was very satisfied. Very well, I will teach you the second set of the 17th edition of the non-phase sword art. With your current cultivation base, as long as you can practice the first 3 layers, it would be difficult for cultivators below the foundation establishment stage to pose a threat to you. And if combined with the non-phase Heart Sutra, you can speed up your Qi cultivating stage cultivation base, supporting your basic attributes. Even a middle-level foundation establishment stage cultivator would find it difficult to hurt you. Oh, so cool? Isn't it cool? Otherwise, why do you think I can use the King Pill to break through the Yuanying stage? For us, the non-phase peak cultivators, if you can't challenge someone of a higher level, then your cultivation base has failed. Well, without further ado, you have 3 months to practice the first 3 layers of the non-phase sword art and advance your cultivation base to the 7th level of the Qi cultivating stage. Wait a minute, reach the 7th level of the Qi cultivating stage in 3 months? Master, are you trying to force me to my death? Normally, it would take at least 1.5 to 2 years to reach the 7th level, right? Humph, how could a cultivator with a dignified void spirit root compare to those wretches? Rest assured, with your rich accumulation, it's easy for you to walk the road that would take others 1 or 2 years to walk in 3 months. Damn, where did my accumulation come from? This void spirit root is purely a drag. Moreover, now that the basic structure has been changed by your non-phase sword bone, my cultivation speed is only at the level of 2nd or 3rd rank spirit root, okay? In short, young man, don't complain and work hard. 3 months later, if you can't reach the 7th level of the Qi cultivating stage and the 3rd layer of the non-phase sword art, hey, when the time comes, don't blame your master for not urging you. 3 months later. What's the matter? I don't know any stellar diffraction technique. How could I know what will happen in 3 months? So, you can completely not believe every word I say. Chapter 73. I don't know the stellar diffraction technique, so how could I know what will happen in the future? Therefore, little Wang Lu, you can completely not believe every word I say. Wang Wu's shameless attitude of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water made her disciple Wang Lu helpless. From their 2 years of experience together, Wang Wu was really not a trustworthy person. The most typical example was 2 years ago when he applied for a long-term meal ticket to the Misty Peak cafeteria. At that time, she boasted that the Misty Peak cafeteria was the supreme example of the Western continent cuisine. When Wang Lu excitedly rushed into the cafeteria with the meal ticket, he was immediately cursed by the look up at the starry sky fish heads. However, to say that she was not trustworthy. Just a day ago, the 6 Heavenly Sword Hall elders endorsed her at the same time. Feng Yin Taoist masters, I believe her, was so domineering. In any case, regardless of whether Taoist master Jifeng believed it or not, they all believed it. Thinking to this, Wang Lu could only sigh in his heart, thinking, I'll believe her one more time. Then it was time for intense and fulfilling cultivation. According to Wang Wu's requirement, Wang Lu had to break through 3 stages in 3 months, all the way until he reached the 7th level of Qi cultivating stage. Among them, the most important one was naturally the non-phase method. For the vast majority of cultivators in the immortal cultivation world, the non-phase method, which taught the cultivators how to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy, transform it into magical power, and directly enhance the cultivation of the immortal cultivation stage, was usually called the core method, which was the foundation of all cultivation. The content of the core method was the most extensive and also the most difficult. Cultivators spent a lot of energy on the core method. As for the non-phase sword method, although his master also required it, it actually belonged to the minor details. However, when Wang Lu actually practiced it, he was surprised to find that the non-phase method was the most effortless. Because this cultivation method was simply too strange. He had been in the school for more than 2 years. Even though he had no luck with most of the skills in the Lingjian school because of his spiritual root, but even if he had not eaten pork, he would still have seen a pig run. The most important reason for the difficulty of cultivating the core skills was that there were too many unfathomable and indescribable contents in the skills of immortal cultivation that required the cultivators to comprehend on their own. Most of the time, how to breathe in and out spiritual energy, how to circulate it, and how to transform it into spiritual energy was just a feeling. The predecessors who invented the cultivation method tried their best to describe this feeling in words and passed it on to their descendants. However, this method of information transmission was inevitably prone to errors. Furthermore, cultivators had different physiques and opportunities. Even if they cultivated the same cultivation technique, they would have completely different experiences. It was very difficult to find a universal formula that could lead all cultivators on the right path. At this time, even if a master came to teach them, the cultivators would still feel at a loss, like a blind man touching an elephant. Every step on the path of cultivation would be difficult. Taking the qi cultivating stage as an example, the most important step was to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy to nourish the inner mansion, to form the circulation of spiritual energy within the body, to transform the magical power, and then to evolve the inner mansion into the jade mansion, to create the node that connects the inside and outside. For the common core skills, there were too many steps that the cultivators needed to try bit by bit. For example, the speed of absorbing spiritual energy, the method to form the circulation, the scale, the structure of each person's inner mansion was different, so the location to form the circulation would also be different. Even if it was the simplest and most universal cultivation method, free and unfettered wander, there were still countless hazy and vague places, which made it difficult to clearly explain the correct cultivation method. However, the non-phase method could. How to use the golden liquid extracted from the 206 sword bones to form the circulation, where to gather the golden liquid in the inner mansion, how much strength to drive the energy, how to form the whirlpool at what speed, what diameter. The explanation of each step was so detailed that it could make one's hair stand on end. Moreover, it was completely tailor-made, so Wang Lu only needed to practice it step by step. There was no room for hesitation. Regarding this point, Wang Wu didn't take credit for it. Actually, it's not that difficult. Although your void spirit root is particularly troublesome when it comes to absorbing spiritual energy, it is, after all, the number one spirit root in the immortal cultivation world. In other aspects, it's also top-notch. Therefore, when designing the cultivation method, as long as you are set as an ideal cultivator, and then deduced according to the most ideal theory, it's just an armchair strategist. You don't even need to test it before you can directly practice it. Of course, this method is only suitable for you. If it's another cultivator, they would probably explode and die in less than half a day, haha. What the hell are you laughing at? You're a Frankenstein who uses your apprentice as a human experiment? In any case, as the core skill of the non-phase method, there was basically no difficulty. His cultivation speed was exceptionally astonishing. In just 10 days, Wang Lu had already constructed the simplest small circulation in his body and completed the 9th level of qi cultivating stage. If this continued, then within 3 months, advancing to the 7th level of qi cultivating stage would also be easy. The next step was the non-phase sword art. According to Wang Lu's choice, his master taught him a set of second form non-phase sword art. This set of sword art was indeed like what his master said, only those with great wisdom could practice it. Because the design idea of this sword art was to gather the essence of all the sword art in the world, omnipotent. At the same time, one must have insight into the flaws of all things, all-conquering. Just listening to this guiding idea, Wang Lu immediately associated it with all kinds of perpetual motion machines, water to oil and other such things. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that it was unreliable. Fortunately, his master quickly continued, of course, that belongs to the ideal state of the non-phase sword art. For you, it may seem illusory, but people who cultivate the immortal cultivation path always have a lofty ideal. As for how to combine it with reality, that's another matter. Wang Lu suddenly understood. It's to build the second form non-phase sword art with Wang Wu's characteristic. Why didn't you say so earlier? However, when his master really taught him the method to practice the first form non-phase sword art, Wang Lu felt that he was being cheated. The first form non-phase sword art is very simple. You just need to find 50 or 60 sets of second or third class sword art from the mortal world, practice them one by one, and master them. Where am I going to find 50 or 60 sets of sword art from the mortal world? Well, this isn't it. While his master said, she pulled out a large pile of worn-out sword manuals from nowhere. These are the high-quality martial arts that I bought from the mortal world at a sky-high price. Practice them well, don't let down your master's painstaking efforts. Wang Lu's face was full of suspicion. Ignoring the dust on the pile of books, he reached out to look at them. Free Cloud Sword Art, Lying Corpse Sword Art, You Knew Sword Art. Damn, aren't these just beginner's sword arts? Do you think I don't understand the classification of martial arts in the mortal world? At least give me 2 sets of Winding Finger Soft Sword and Fallen Flower Divine Sword? He continued to look, and this time he found a piece of paper which read, Scripture Pavilion's products must be high-quality, limited-time discount, a stack of 10 taels. Wang Lu immediately looked up, but his master had already disappeared. Although he always felt that he was cheated by his master in the next half a month, Wang Lu still honestly practiced these dozens of beginner's sword arts one by one. It was reasonable to say that even if it was just a beginner's sword art, it would be difficult to achieve success without 3 to 5 years of practice. However, Wang Lu had been soaked in the changing muscle and washing marrow soup to become a rare martial arts genius, and he also had the foundation of non-phase sword bone. Thus, his cultivation speed was far from that of an ordinary person. 10 days later he was able to use these dozens of sword arts. And in these 10 days Wang Lu gradually realized his master's intention. Although these beginner's sword arts were easy to understand and their actual combat value was not high, they were the summary of the mortal world's martial arts world for hundreds of thousands of years. They were the most suitable for a newcomer to understand the sword theory and reach the next level in the way of the sword. Although Wang Lu had previously learned the soft cloud sword, his understanding was only at the technical level, and he did not comprehend the deeper content of the way of the sword. Through the practice of these dozens of sword arts with different characteristics, Wang Lu gradually figured out that there were some common principles among these sword arts. Although this feeling was still very vague according to his master, this was the first level of the non-phase sword art. In her own words, this level was more of a theoretical study, and it was still far from actual combat. Therefore, although Wang Lu had practiced the first level of the non-phase sword art, it was not as good as the soft cloud sword. This was probably why a full 6-star sword art was not as good as a full 4-star sword art. The following second level was exactly the same as the first level. It was still a theoretical discussion, and did not involve actual combat. It was just that the beginner's sword art became the middle-level sword art that was circulated in the mortal world's martial arts world, like the famous sword art of each sect. The only difference was that the wholesale price was increased from 10 taels of silver to 1,000 taels of silver. He didn't know what kind of god this scripture pavilion was, that they could even sell the middle-level sword art in bulk. The level of the sword art increased, and its variation and power also increased exponentially, but the difficulty of practicing it did not increase by much. After 10 days, dozens of middle-level sword arts were overcome by Wang Lu one by one, and he was very clear about them. Then, when Wang Lu confidently challenged the third level, the situation changed a lot. According to his master's overall plan, the third level would be the embryonic form of the non-phase sword art, and the initial ability to use it in actual combat, and this initial was the standard of the immortal cultivation world. If it was in the mortal world, the third level of the non-phase sword art could surpass any of the mortal world's top sword art. As for the method of practicing it, it's very simple. You have to master the hundreds of sword arts that you have learned before, deeply understand the truth, and then combine it with your own actual situation to create your own. Even if it's the embryonic form of the second level of the non-phase sword art, the third level would also be completed. Create my own sword art? Wang Lu simply couldn't believe it. Isn't it very democratic, very free, and very universal? Universal, your sister. Hurry up and give me a set of autocratic dictatorship like the non-phase method. As a result, his master sighed. Unfortunately, I'm not joking about this issue. Non-phase sword art and non-phase method are two different things. The first few levels of non-phase method are the foundation of the immortal cultivation world. In simple terms, it's the unity of man and nature. As long as the sky doesn't change and the people don't change, naturally, a set of fixed correct answer can be summed up to tell you how to practice it. However, the sword art is a method of facing the enemy, a method of actual combat with endless variations. How could there be a set of fixed routines? Therefore, you need to explore and comprehend it yourself, to find the path that suits you. Thinking back, your master also walked step by step like this. For you to have the guidance of a famous teacher, you are already many times luckier than your master. Therefore, brave young man, quickly find your own path. F***ck. My path is to trample your pretentious face under my feet. The cultivation of the third level of the non-phase sword art was very slow. From the time when his master set the 3-month deadline, more than a month had passed. The cultivation of the non-phase method had steadily progressed. Now, his cultivation base was already at the 8th rank, and the 7th rank was also within sight. In addition, the various mortal world sword arts required for the first 2 levels of the sword art had almost reached the master level. Unfortunately, there wasn't even a shadow of the 3rd level of the sword art. Originally, when it came to martial arts, Wang Lu had the best teacher. the lady boss of a certain inn. However, now that he urgently needed her help, the lady boss had mysteriously disappeared, and he couldn't find her. After inquiring about it in the Spirit Creek town, he found out that she actually went to the nearby village to purchase goods. Holy sh*t, your average daily turnover is more than 10,000 yuan, what kind of goods do you want to purchase? If you can sell it, then there's a ghost. On second thought, Wang Lu realized that it was probably because of his overeating in the inn, which used up too much of the stored food, which forced the lady boss to go out to purchase goods. He really reaped what he sowed. Without help, he could only rely on himself. However, creating his own sword art was easier said than done. Although in the past month, through continuous cultivation of the sword art, Wang Lu had a considerable understanding of the way of the sword, and the shadow of the sword was faintly left in his heart, but using this as the foundation to create a set of sword art that was suitable for himself, it was extremely difficult. Of course, with Wang Lu's talent and perception, if he really wanted to create it, it was not impossible. By tinkering with the existing materials, he could also integrate a set of new sword art that was far superior to the middle level of the mortal world sword art. However, according to his master, this self-created sword art would become the foundation of his practice for a long time in the future. So, what was the point of deceiving himself on this issue? Since he had the void spirit root, since he was a professional adventurer, since he had this and that special thing, then either he didn't do it or he did it to the best of his ability. According to his master, the second level of the non-phase sword art was a test of great wisdom. Then he would use his own supreme perception to break through this hurdle. Isn't it just 100 sets of mortal world sword art? Let me use my supreme deduction power to simulate and experiment them one by one in my mind, and finally come up with the result. Therefore, in the next few days, Wang Lu was like a lovelorn teenager, meditating on the way of the sword all day long, and then sighing and tossing and turning, unable to sleep. One day Wang Lu was absent-minded. Like a wandering spirit in the daytime, he staggered down the non-phase peak. Using the sect's shrinking array, he came to the small square of the misty peak and swayed left and right toward the cafeteria. Along the way, many of his senior brothers and senior sisters who knew him were scared by him. He didn't respond to their greetings, ignored them when they called his name, and even waved their hands in front of his eyes, but none of them could make his pair of vacant eyes focus. Some people thought that he was possessed by the devil and hurriedly went to find the sect's elder. As a result, Elder Lucien hurriedly flew over to take a look and scolded, "Non-Face Peak's idiot is trying to impress the crowd again. None of you care about him. Very well, since Elderly said so, then let's just ignore him." However, looking at the young red and white disciple with a dazed look rushing into the Misty Peak cafeteria, it was really unbearable. Several Spirit Sword sect disciples looked at Wang Lu with pity, and then looked at the new signboard hanging at the entrance of the Misty Peak cafeteria. Family reciprocation, sincere reward, brand new dish, please taste. They couldn't help but shed tears of sympathy. Chapter 74. Unknowingly he walked toward the Misty Peak cafeteria. Wang Lu didn't realize that there was a bottomless abyss in front of him. His whole mind was devoted to the deduction of his swordsmanship. In his mind, each and every one of the little people brandished their swords and sometimes fought with each other. As a bystander, Wang Lu could learn from them and extract valuable experience. Not long ago, Wang Lu also discovered that he actually had this kind of ability. Perhaps it was the non-phase sword bone, especially the Emperor bone, that effectively improved his IQ, or perhaps it was the non-phase method that absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy and initially condensed his primordial spirit. In short, since he had this ability, he should use it to his heart's content. Wasn't this how great wisdom came about? And when Wang Lu deduced the reclining corpse sword art against the free cloud sword art for the 15th time and was intoxicated by the new flaw of the free cloud sword art, suddenly his body was slapped by someone. With a violent shake, that mysterious realm was shattered. Damn, who is it? With a face full of anger, Wang Lu returned to the real world. He found himself sitting in the middle of the Misty Peak cafeteria. A petite but heroic blonde girl was staring at him with her green eyes. "Excuse me, what do you need?" Wang Lu looked around and found that he was the only guest in the cafeteria. Inwardly, he cursed, guessing that he had inadvertently broken into a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. The 4 forbidden areas of the Spirit Sword Mountain, the sect leader's bedroom, the pink house, the sword tomb, and the new Misty Peak cafeteria. This is really courting death. Wang Lu silently sang an elegy to himself, and then resolutely said, "If you have something new here, bring it to me." In the cultivation of the sword, the most important thing was to have the indomitable momentum of a sword. Whether you are the 13 tycoons looking up at the starry sky or the 1,000,000 kings pulling out the sword in the stone, I, your father, will eat you today. Hearing Wang Lu's words, the little bit of unhappiness on the young chef's face suddenly disappeared and was replaced with a pleasantly surprised smile. Very good. Today I just launched a new dish inspired by my distant hometown. With the lake as the theme, it has a very memorable value. Damn it, I, your father, am not a Western continent person. Why do I need the commemorative value? Anyway, don't worry. The dish this time will definitely give you a pleasant surprise. The girl made the promise in an imposing manner. Then, without asking anything else, she quickly walked back to the kitchen to prepare the new lake-themed dish. A moment later, when Wang Lu subconsciously wanted to enter the meditation to deduce the sword art, the blonde girl came out of the meditation room. In her hand was a porcelain pot that seemed very large compared to her size. She then firmly placed it on the table with a proud look on her face. Have a taste, this is my masterpiece. Wang Lu trembled with fear as he looked at the dark green soup in the huge porcelain pot. Regardless of the strange smell or the occasional bubbles, just the suspicious meatball floating in the middle of the soup was enough to make people unable to let go of it no matter what. Wang Lu cautiously asked, "May I ask if your dish, is it a Loch Ness monster?" The girl frowned. "No, it's a lake elf." "Don't you think the appearance of this elf is a bit strange?" The girl continued to frown. "Is it? You'd better eat it quickly or it won't taste good when it gets cold." "No, I'm sure this thing should be frozen to absolute zero for it to be the most suitable." However, when Wang Lu put a spoonful of the soup into his mouth with the courage to overcome all obstacles, he was surprised to find that it didn't seem that bad. Although it was far from delicious and it couldn't be compared to a certain girl who was good at cooking at the Rue Family Inn, but, compared to the stargazy pie and other dishes that had been deceiving him for years, it had made great progress. After repeatedly confirming that his taste buds did not betray his master, Wang Lu very straightforwardly gave her a thumbs up. The girl's smile bloomed in a flash, almost like the blooming of spring flowers, completely covering the horror of the dark green soup on the table. "Thank you for your appreciation. I will continue to work hard and live up to the expectations of the customers." Then she returned to the kitchen in high spirits to make other dishes. Wang Lu drank a few spoonfuls of the lake elf, but because his taste buds weren't that strong, he quickly became engrossed in the deductions of swordsmanship. After an unknown amount of time, Wang Lu, who had finished his deductions, turned his attention back to reality, only to find the green-eyed girl standing in front of him with a disappointed expression. There were a few dishes on the table, but they had all gone cold without exception. And although Wang Lu held a spoon and chopsticks in his hands, he hadn't touched them at all. As expected, it still doesn't work?" The girl sighed very sadly, quietly admitting her failure. For a proud person like her, this kind of feeling was really painful and indescribable. Looking at the girl's disappointment and pain, Wang Lu thought for a moment, feeling as if he had inadvertently become a demon who destroyed a flower and played with a girl's heart. According to the rules of the sect, it seemed that he had violated the precept of lust. Although this was really an unintentional mistake, professional adventurers should dare to take responsibility for their actions. "Since I played with your heart, I will take responsibility for it to the end." "Actually, I was just distracted just now." The girl nodded firmly. "I can understand. Brilliant warriors will use distraction to relieve pain, and it is my fault that I brought you so much pain. I really don't have the talent." "Wait, girl, you misunderstood. Actually, it's like this." Wang Lu simply told her about his current failure in swordsmanship, and the problem of being in a trance all day. This was easier to win people's trust. But after saying this, he found that the girl was looking at him with great surprise. "You know swordsmanship?" Damn, Wang Lu was immediately unhappy. This question seemed to be lamenting. Even pigs can climb trees? In any case, you are a true disciple of a swordsmanship sect. If you don't know swordsmanship, should I show you the nine-toothed harrow? Although the aptitude of the void spirit root is a bit of a pain in the ass, there is no need to look down on people like this. Realizing that she had misspoken, the girl covered her mouth and then explained, "No, I'm just surprised. Since you know swordsmanship, why use such an immature method to cultivate your swordsmanship?" Wang Lu said, "How is it immature? Using superior intelligence to deduce swordsmanship, increasing efficiency and reducing cost, what's wrong with that?" The girl thought for a moment and then somewhat stiffly replied, "Swordsmanship is not thought of but used." Wang Lu sighed. "My swordsmanship is different, it needs great wisdom to practice. The girl pondered for a long time this time, until Wang Lu was about to get up to pay the bill. She said, I remember even in the language of Yunnan region's people, wisdom and intelligence are two completely different words. Wang Lu was stunned when he heard this. Intelligence, wisdom, there seemed to be a flash of light in the dark. The girl slightly frowned and continued, intelligence is mostly innate, while wisdom is mostly acquired experience. Since it needs great wisdom to cultivate, it should rely more on experience, in other words, actual combat experience. How can you blindly think about it? Well said, it's really enlightening. Upon hearing this, the light in Wang Lu's mind had already spread into the sunlight, and all the haze had vanished. It was indeed as the girl said. Unfortunately, he had been anxious for so many days that he didn't see through it. Swordsmanship had to be practiced, and he had already accumulated enough theoretical foundation after many days of deduction. The only thing he lacked was actual combat experience. It was just that, the practice of swordsmanship obviously couldn't be done behind closed doors. It was best to have someone who could guide him. He didn't need to be very strong, but at the very least he had to be proficient in the way of the sword. He had practiced more than 100 swordsmanship, but he still couldn't enter the way, so the other party must have mastered more swordsmanship than that, right? Although many of the senior brothers and sisters in the sect had amazing strength, profound cultivation, and especially sharp swordsmanship, their attainments in the way of the sword might not be very high. Swordsmanship and the way of the sword were two different things. Normally, the best person to guide him would undoubtedly be the lady boss, but now she wasn't here. While thinking, he saw a pair of green eyes out of the corner of his eye, and an idea flashed in Wang Lu's mind. Didn't he have a ready-made one? Although he hadn't seen this girl fight before and he didn't know her depth, just now she had seen through the mysteries of the way of the sword and enlightened him. If she wasn't an expert, then who was? Some loser who couldn't even get out of bed in the afternoon and didn't even have 2 sets of clothes to change into? You want me to help you practice swordsmanship? The girl chef who was cleaning the dishes looked at Wang Lu in surprise. She didn't expect him to make such a request. After a moment of hesitation, the girl shook her head. I'm just a chef, I can't help you with anything. How could Wang Lu believe this? He waved the long-term meal ticket in his hand. For the sake of an old customer, please do me a favor. It's a sincere offer. Frightened by the rare long-term meal ticket, the girl stammered, but Wang Lu couldn't be bothered to say more. He directly pulled out the purple soft sword from his waist and stabbed at the girl's shoulder. The other party didn't expect Wang Lu to make a move just like that. She was really surprised, especially with the bowl and chopsticks in her hand. It was inconvenient for her to dodge. But the next moment, the girl held the bowl and chopsticks steadily with one hand, and with the other she held a chopstick. She lightly touched the tip of Wang Lu's soft sword and blocked it. When the sword didn't hit, Wang Lu took advantage of the situation to withdraw the soft sword, but he was amazed in his heart. As expected of a great hidden expert, the sword he used just now was not the soft cloud sword technique, but the heaven and earth sword techniques. One sword determines the heaven and earth. It was full of power. With his chi cultivating stage 8 cultivation, even a first-rate martial artist wouldn't be able to block it. But he didn't expect that the golden-haired girl only used a chopstick to easily block the sword. If this wasn't an expert, then who was? So, without waiting for the girl to put down the bowl and chopsticks, Wang Lu very straightforwardly knelt on the ground. Master, please accept this disciple's bow. Whoosh. The dishes and bowls fell to the ground. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.